The meeting of the Gilroy Unified School District Board of Education will now come to order. This evening, we'd like to ask B.C. Doyle to please lead the pledge.
Please stand. Salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
This evening, in the absence of Dr. Flores, our superintendent, Alvaro Mesa, our assistant superintendent, will lead the meeting with us. Thank you.
¿Hay alguien aquí que necesite intérprete para esta junta? No hay nadie.
Thank you.
At this time, I will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment. And we do have someone who would like to address the board.
And we have one, and that would be Sherry Lynch. And Sherry, you have 3 minutes, okay?
Oh, it's an item on the agenda. It's not really under general.
Oh, I see.
Oh, it's just-
Good evening, board members. My name is Sherry Lynch. If you don't already know who I am, I'm a staff member here at the district office. And even though I've been here with Gilroy Unified for only 4 years, I have been in the field of education for my entire career, almost 34 years now. 6 months ago, I got my dream job with my dream boss, but unfortunately now my boss is leaving. In fact, 3 of the 4 administrators in my department are leaving. You see, I work in student services, and the changing of administration is not new for student services. In fact, just recently, a coworker of mine told me that during his tenure, he has seen 18 different directors. I found that statement a little shocking and sad at the same time. Student Services Department is understaffed, overworked, and underappreciated. There are not enough school psychologists to handle the testing that is mandated. We are lacking an appropriate number of program specialists to handle student crises, daily placement needs, and day-to-day compliance issues that need to be handled. There's only 1 full-time year-round secretary, and one of the other clerical staff members we have is the lowest paid classified staff in the entire district. I am hoping that with the 17-18 school year, Gilroy Unified's diverse departments can work together to help our new administration overcome some long-standing issues that this department has faced. Barbara Brown will be presenting her end-of-the-year report for the Student Services Department in a few minutes. She's put a lot of time and effort into this report. It's a snapshot of all the hard work that her staff has done this school year, and it's also a blueprint for the new director that is coming. I hope that everyone listens with open ears and open minds. I hope that the board, district leaders, and site staff offer the support, leadership, and respect that the Student Services Department needs and deserves. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next part of our agenda is consent agenda. Actually, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all consent items from the different departments. They're all sitting right here. So, thank you, Gina, for delivering my board packet. I hope you didn't strain your back in doing that. Yeah. Okay, so let's do this one section at a time. Section 5 is consent agenda, superintendent and human resources departments. I'll entertain a motion to approve this portion of the agenda.
Move approval on section 5.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next part of the consent agenda is from business services. Just checking really quickly, we don't have a resolution in there. Okay.
Move approval.
We
Second.
do have a resolution 1617-06, award a bid. Is that a resolution, Gina?
Is that the,
We'll need a roll, yes.
No, it's
But it's not a resolution?
It doesn't say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
that's the bid number, right?
right.
My apologies.
That's okay. All right, so we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes, I seconded.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded for item 6, the consent agenda for business services. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. It passes unanimously. Item 7 is the consent agenda for educational services. And prior to taking a motion, I would just like to thank Deb Padilla for responding to questions that I submitted about this section. I think the email was copied to you. Okay. And also Kathleen Bierman responded to questions that I had. So all of this pertains to educational services. Do we have any questions or comments on any item in this section? Just checking real quickly, we do not have a resolution in this section either. Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And the last section of the consent agenda pertains to student services. That's item 8, and all of the issues, renewals in there. They're all renewals. Any questions, comments? Then I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, section 9 is action information items. 9A, Gilroy Teachers Association initial negotiations proposal to the district for the 2017-2018 school year, and Vince Oberst will be presenting this.
Good evening, Board. My name is Vince Oberst. I am currently the president for the Gilroy Teachers Association, but I stand before you today as the 2017-18 lead negotiator for the Gilroy Teachers Association. You had before you the articles we would like to open in this next round of negotiations. The back of the paper has a brief description of each one. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer it. This also has a small test for Trustee Good, who has the eyes of an eagle. You will notice that on the front, it has Article 27, peer resistance and review, and on the back, it is not listed. We are not opening that article.
You're not?
We are not opening that
Okay.
article. So that was a mistake on my part when I initially sent this to Ms. Kaufman, and then
Thank
when I
you.
sent the remainder of it, we had decided not to open that one.
Okay, thank you for the correction.
You messed up having me ask the question then.
Well, normally you're Johnny on the spot and say, I have a question right off the bat.
I was lying in wait.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. If there are no questions, I do have one thing to add as the president, and that is I would like to thank each and every one of you for my 2 years. June 30th is my last day as president, and we have a new president coming in. And so I just want to say thank you for meeting with me and being open-minded. The past 2 presidents have had meetings with all the union leaders. It's been really great to start building that relationship and taking our district to a different direction that really benefits students, administration, and employees as a whole unit working together. And I think working conditions matter. You can't attach a value to it other than, I like to be here. Additionally, I'd also like to thank all the different departments for working with me. I always got emails. I was always given a very quick meeting time if I needed it. So business services, Ed Services, the administration, thank you very much for all of your help. I appreciate that. And especially, I would like to thank Ms. Stephanie Totter, who suffered every single Friday by sitting with me and going over at least 2 hours worth of issues and things, and sometimes during the middle of the week, we would talk. And I'm very appreciative because I think we solved, at least according to the superintendent, she was just like, you guys do that, that's great, let me know how it turns out. And it really worked well, and I think things went faster and we accomplished more that way. So I just wanted to say thank you. I think we got a lot accomplished, and I hope to see the Gilroy Teachers Association and this administration continue to collaborate and work together and make this district a great place to be. Thanks.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
This is an informational item. And as president of the board, I'd like to thank you for meeting with us informally. We had meetings 4 times this year at 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was with the union leaders and the president and vice president of the board, and we didn't have an agenda. It was good. Covered a lot of good topics. So, thank you. Okay, item 9B. Oh, sure. Okay, our architects are not here yet, so we're going to skip 9B and move on to 9C. This is a resolution, 161762, Navigator Schools Prop 51 Charter School Funding.
Thank you, Madam President, and luckily for us, Kevin is here early. I told him 7:30, but thank you, Kevin. If you could address the podium, please, while I make some introductory remarks. So as you know, as required by both Ed Code and the School Facilities Program, the charter school, Navigator School, did submit a letter addressed to our superintendent on May 4th that basically outlined the Navigator School intention of going after Prop 51 funding for charter school construction. As outlined in that letter, May 4th, they did meet the application deadline of June 5th. Now, we as a school district have up to 90 days after that point to adopt the resolution, which really requires us to do a series of calculations, noting primarily the amount of unhoused pupils that the project would then basically alleviate. The calculation was performed by our school facilities consultant, and that, along with the resolution, is included in your packet. Exhibit A is a calculation of unhoused pupils that's included in your packet, and it was determined that the request would have no projected unhoused pupils in the K-6 or 7-8 grade level span. But we are required to take action on this resolution. And we've asked Kevin to be present to outline the rationale for that request. Kevin.
Okay. Well, thank you, Assistant Superintendent Mesa. Good evening, board members. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm just finishing up my first year as CEO of Navigator Schools, which, as you know, operates Gilroy Prep School. And just first, a heartfelt thank you for all your support over the years. I know I can't take any credit for any of that, but it sure has been just a great partnership working with the school district, the facility staff, the maintenance staff, the superintendent, and the board, of course. We've had many visits from board members, and we're always proud to show off the great work we're doing at Gilroy Prep, and we know it wouldn't be possible without all your support. So with that, it's because we've gotten so much great support, especially thinking about our wonder, we love our facility. The last thing we want to do is try to move out of that site and take on debt to build something new. I mean, that's the last thing we want to do, believe me. We love the great partnership we have. We were a little concerned about what we're hearing about this train coming through. I think it's called the high-speed rail. And that it may potentially take out our site, and that while we are very grateful and appreciate the strong stand that the district is taking with the high-speed rail in wanting to make sure that they make, I think I'm quoting Dr. Flores when she says, make us whole and get a full new site. We're also concerned about just what might end up happening if it ends up potentially going into litigation or who knows what. And so when the state, when the voters passed Proposition 51, and there was a set aside for charter school funding, it seemed like a good opportunity to maybe take a chance and just see if we were able to get funding. It might create another opportunity for building new facilities for Gilroy Prep. And we were really painstaking to make sure that it wouldn't in any way negatively impact Gilroy Unified in making this application. And as that resolution indicates, there's 0 unhoused pupils that we would be kind of taking out of your pool or potential funding for unhoused. So it's really a potentially win-win situation. I think the worst case is that it ends up being a difficult choice. But just so you know, I'll say we're a bit of a long shot. These are highly competitive, but compared to a lot of grant opportunities, the odds are probably better than most. So we thought it was worth the effort to apply, and if you have any questions for us, I'd be happy to answer. I'll just say if the high-speed rail decides not to come through, we'd be super happy, just staying right where we are.
Trustee Pacino.
I have a question. You probably don't have the answer, but I'll ask it anyway.
Okay.
So if you get this grant and you start to build a school elsewhere, wherever that is, good luck in finding land on
Right.
that. We've been there, done that. So if you move out of that site and high-speed rail chooses to come in there, and it is no longer a operating school, my question is, what happens to us? Because then we just lose it, and we're not made whole because they're just buildings.
Well, I do think that's a good question.
I thought so.
And I may be off base in my answer, but I'll say a couple things. First, I'll say that the timing for when this grant award would actually take place is probably beyond the time frame that the high-speed rail is actually scheduled to make that decision. So from what I've heard is that they may not even finish the scoring of the applications by December. So the timing for that, and then there's a fairly lengthy vetting process, because we actually had to make 2 applications, one to the Office of Public School Construction, and a second one to the Charter School Finance Authority that looks at all of our financial and organizational structure to really make sure that we'd be able to deliver on a project and repay whatever part of there's a grant, and then there's a possible loan that comes with the grant. So there's a lot of vetting process. So I would imagine that we would probably be at least a year away from actually even being able to sign a grant agreement. And then from there, there's other steps and processes. So that's one side, is the timing. And then on the flip side is that whether we're there or not, I mean, it's still a school building with, still a school property with buildings that, with a growing population in Gilroy, that absolutely, Gilroy Unified deserves whatever value of that land, whether we're there or not. I mean, I'd like to think that we raised the value for you, but I think it's valuable nonetheless. And from what I know about the laws with the high-speed rail is that whether, the land's being used or not, it's the assessed value that they're responsible for providing. But Assistant Superintendent Mesa probably knows a lot more than I do.
Trustee Best, you want to go forward before I make my comments?
Go ahead, please.
Well, I do want to state that for the record, we have been extremely clear, and Dr. Flores has as well, with the high-speed rail, that what we need is a district elementary site to be whole, not a charter school to be whole. So those are quite clear distinctions because, as you know, Kevin, the charter schools have a lot of waivers that we're not eligible for. So you could potentially house an elementary campus without the necessary playing fields, as an example, where we have to provide green space and adequate playground space for an elementary size of GPS. So what we're in discussions with high-speed rail is all along has been you have to make us whole in an elementary really now K-8 campus, really, because they're going into the middle school. And that takes another layer. So I just want to state that while Navigator is independently applying for Prop 51, because they're in our boundary, we're also required to take action on this resolution.
Could this resolution hurt us?
Not as it stands because of the zero on-house pupils.
Well, if they get the grant and they move off, would that impact Gilroy Unified negatively?
Should that happen, we have a vacant site that could potentially expose us to other charters.
Okay.
Trustee Bass?
My question was, you'd mentioned in the event that the rail does not decide to go through, you'll have already applied for the grant. Will you, at that point, decide not to follow through with the grant and not do the, or are you gonna, what are you thinking?
I have a board I report to as well. I know that there's a lot of reluctance to enter any type of facility arrangement where we're having to pay down a bond or some type of debt. And so in our current arrangement, you know, the school, we pay 2% of our LCFF revenue for the facility use. And that's a great deal. And so when we think about the amount of land that we have, the buildings that we have in the deal, I can't, in my imagination, think how we would ever want to move away from that. So the burden of not only the debt, but of finding a site, building a site, and so forth with the grant funds does not sound super appealing to me compared to what we have. My worst case scenario is that high-speed rail does say they're coming through, despite their obligation to try to make us whole because of the cost of land, where the land might be located. Most of our kids walk to school. And so if we find vacant land on the other side of the freeway, that's not really going to help us very much. And I'm not sure what kind of constraints we might place on, or the district might place on high-speed rail in terms of that. But when we look around for where the vacant land is, I mean, it's not that easy to find much in our neighborhood. And so we do think that it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have another alternative just in case. But again, that's out there in the future, and we just thought putting our hat in the ring, so to speak, made a lot of sense. So in a short answer, I would just say, if the high-speed rail decides not to go through there and our site's not affected, we're not going to proceed. As long as I'm CEO, we wouldn't proceed. It's not a great pathway for us, but it may be the best of the alternatives depending on how it all turns out.
Other questions, comments, board members? Oh, Trustee Rosso.
So effectively, we're saying in this resolution that it will not negatively impact us as far as, I'm sorry. So effectively, in this resolution, we're saying that it's not going to negatively impact us in terms of creating more demand for facility needs. In other words, it's not going to create where the district needs to provide more housing for students. Correct. Therefore, for that reason, because it's not going to do it, therefore, we're almost neutral, right?
Yes. Now, we don't know what will happen if, say, high-speed rail doesn't come through and if they get the award, but Kevin's affirmed, I believe, that he would then not pursue other opportunities to open a new school here. I'm not sure if you're in the position to state that clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as I'm around, I could say that, but maybe I won't be around if my board decides otherwise. But I mean, I don't think it would make it a smart business move for us if we didn't have to move, because I mean, we know what we have. I mean, we love it. We have the use of South Valley's fields. I mean, where are we going to find a school located next to a middle school where we can share facilities and have a gym? I mean, and a drive around. I mean, we know we have it really well, really good. For a charter school, that's not, you don't find that very often in other districts where charter schools are doing Prop 39. So believe me, I turned over a lot in my sleep about this because I know I didn't want to rub anybody here the wrong way. We've worked on developing relationships here a long time. Last thing I want to do in my first year is undo any of that. So when it really seemed like there's no way that this has a negative impact on the district, and there could be a benefit to both of us down the road, because if in fact high-speed rail does come through, there could be potentially another pot of money to help support whatever that next move is.
Kevin, if I may, Board President, I have a question. How flexible is the funding? Can you take let's just assume that they approve your funding. You get, just to throw a number out there, $8 million. Can you take that $8 million and use it in Hollister or any other place, or are you limited to Gilroy in our boundary?
Yeah, no, this is limited to Gilroy. It's, I believe it's limited to a 3-mile radius from whatever elementary school we designated as so basically, you get points for FRL numbers, and so the free and reduced lunch count. So we wanted to, and that's our target population, even though our population has changed because of just the interest in the school, that's our target population. So we designated the site to be within the radius of Elliott. So we are supposed to be located within a 3-mile radius of Elliott for the purposes of this grant.
I still have more questions. So in effect, potentially, there is an impact on us, which is we would in effect have a surplus school site. You know, in other words, a site that we don't currently have need for. So, I mean, it still doesn't preclude the obligation that the high-speed rail would have to make us whole for our school site.
That's great.
So, on the other hand, it kind of boggles me a little bit, in my mind, about the rationale. I understand the funding's there to assist the charter schools. I get that. And most schools don't have, like you say, the facilities that are provided for Gilroy Prep. So it kind of, you know, if you got a site, and, you know, I'm not quite sure what the rationale would be for funding a new site, you know, because potentially this may come to pass if the state, if the high-speed rail, in fact, fulfills its obligation, as they have told us, then they would have to make us whole anyway. And that means we'd have to find a site and build a school.
That's really not the way the law works. There's been discussions about that. This district has no obligation to build a school for a charter school.
Right.
For a charter school. We have to share what we have that's available.
Right.
We have no obligation to build out of whole cloth another school.
Right.
None.
But what I'm saying is we have a school.
Right.
And if the high-speed rail comes through, they would be under obligation to make us whole.
Correct.
That means to basically relocate our current school site somewhere else. So in effect, you know, it's almost a duplication of effort, right?
And for the benefit of the public, yes, charter schools there, but also its impact to operations, facilities, transportation, maintenance, we're also there.
Right.
So it's a larger obligation that the
It's
high-speed rail
It's a
has.
larger obligation, but they still would have to make the charter school whole no matter what.
That to make us whole.
They have to make the district.
The district,
Yes.
okay, what I mean, the school site would have to be made whole again. I mean, just like you said, it's a very nice facility. I think we all can agree on that one. So, and no doubt in my mind, if the high-speed rail, you know, as it comes to, you know, comes to pass, they will be obligated to replace that school. And they'll have to find a site and rebuild that school. So, I know the charter funds are provided funding to be able to, in other words, for charter schools, I get that. In a way, we'll have two competing, how would you call it? Well, I guess in the light that you're saying it, Mark, is that it still would be our facility.
Right.
So whether it houses them or not houses them, it's still our facility. At the same time, we'd be in a kind of a little bit of a strange position of having a school site that is a surplus site being rebuilt. So it would have an impact. You know what I mean? It could potentially have a negative impact.
Well, the way it works is, they pay you for the cost
Of building a
of
new school.
replacing what you've done, what they've taken away from you. You do whatever you want with the money. There's no obligation to recreate that exact thing on a different piece of property. They have to pay you for what they've taken. And then you take the money and do with it what you will, and that would be the district.
Okay. And just trying to have that
Sure.
understanding.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Other comments, questions from board members? Okay, let's look at what we're looking at here. This is a resolution, 161762, Navigator Schools Prop 51 Charter School Funding. And down in the briefing, the Navigator School is required to notify the superintendent and governing board of their intent to apply for new construction funding 30 days prior to submitting an application with OPSC. The application deadline was June 5th, 2017. Basically, pursuant to SFP Regulation 1859.162.1, the district has 90 days from the notification letter, which was May 4th, to bring resolution to its governing board and certify the number of unhoused pupils the new charter project would house. And we've been told that there are no unhoused pupils.
Correct.
I'm sorry. Could you please give me a definition of unhoused pupils?
Yeah, unhoused.
So the district wouldn't be negatively impacted by their project
Okay.
as it stands right now.
Okay, so this is a resolution,
I have an issue with some of the language.
okay?
The last whereas, it says whereas Exhibit A attached outlines the methodology utilized to determine the number of undisclosed pupils which would be served by the proposed project. Exhibit A doesn't outline any methodology, it just states a number. So I would recommend that the words methodology utilized to determine be stricken, and then it would read outlines the number of unhoused pupils which would be served by the proposed project.
Thank you.
Okay. We're gonna scratch outlines the methodology utilized to determine, we're just gonna say the number of unhoused pupils, correct?
Right.
Okay. With that addendum, I'll entertain a motion
I would move approval as modified.
as modified.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and this is a roll call vote. This is a resolution.
Heather Bass,
Yes.
B.C. Doyle,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
Pat Middleton,
Yes?
James, Linda Pacino,
Yes.
Jaime Rosso.
Yes.
The resolution carries.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck, Kevin. Thank you for coming.
Our architects are still not here.
You know what? I have to go back to, apologies, I have to go back to 3E. I did not report the action taken in closed session.
3, oh, gosh.
So, on a motion by trustee Good, second by trustee Doyle, the board in closed session voted 6-0 to not readmit case 2017-04. Second one, on a motion by trustee Good, second by trustee Pacino, the board in closed session voted 5-0 with one abstention to readmit case 2017-01. The third item, on a motion by trustee Good, second by trustee Paceno, the board in closed session voted 6-0 to readmit case number 2017-07. And the fourth action in closed session, on a motion by trustee Good, second by trustee Rosso, the board in closed session voted 4-2 to readmit case 2017-12. Thank you. Okay, our architects are still not here, so let's see. We're going to have an adult ed report this evening. Okay, the GUSD Adult Ed Program first year report. Staff will report on the recent history, structure, funding, and status of the adult education program. And Greg Camacho Light is here to give us this report.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, President Midgard and board, and Assistant Superintendent Mr. Mason. What I'm hopeful is that through this presentation, you'll see the different parts of the adult ed program actually coming together. It's not so much that we've been around for a while. And in a general, I guess, beginning here is it didn't start off on the best of feet, if you will, because everything that could be late delivered, never got there, everything. We're just exactly to the way you would want it not to happen, but the way it did. But we were able to get it going. I hope I'm not too presumptuous in thinking that maybe we take a little bit of time to understand how we kind of got here. We had a very good adult ed program a few years ago, and then a series of budget cuts, and having less and less money for the program itself. And then the state looked at what was happening across the state with adult ed, and there was a lot of duplication of effort. This is where I pull up my glasses. I hope I can see where I'm going here. In 2012, the Little Hoover Commission report, Serving Students, Serving California, and also the Legislative Analysis Office report, Restructuring California's Adult Education System, from their perspective, stated that the state of California provides seemingly similar educational services through two different agencies, adult education through the K-12 system and non-credit and credit instruction through the California community colleges. And this was happening here as well. We would have ESL program, they had ESL program. We were duplicating a lot of effort, and actually both programs were seeing some strains as far as getting enough students to continue programs. And AB 86 and AB 104 over the years was what to make us whole. AB 86 restructured the adult education so that the community college played an increasing role in the delivery of adult education in California. And so at that time, we really saw ourselves handing it over to Gavilan and saying, okay, there you go. Unfortunately, even though they were working on the consortium development and the planning and whatnot, they had issues with having to come up with the right people to be able to deliver both those programs that were non-credit on their side, but also somebody that's credentialed to be able to present a K-12 program on the other side. And then AB 104, after the structure was put in place for the consortiums, we had, luckily enough, $500 million of what is now called the Adult Education Block Grant, spread out across California. And the legislation describes very specific actions to assure that the funding is used to implement the AB 86 plans, and that decisions are made transparently while inviting comment from key stakeholders. So now we have a consortium at Gavilan College that made up of Gilroy Unified, Morgan Hill Unified, San Benito High, and we're able then, in Gavilan, to put that together, work together to see that funds are divvied up accordingly so that, one, we not only continue that part of our charter, if you will, but also anything that's missing. So in our case with GUSD, we were able to work with Gavilan, and we took back the diploma program. We took back the GED program. Actually, we will do that this next fall, and the adult basic ed program. They continued with what they do excellently, which is the ESL programs, ESL levels, the citizenship, and computer literacy. So looking at this coming year, 2017-18, the formula, what it's doing for our consortium, is a little bit less than $600,000 presented for maintenance of effort. And I'll show you in another slide what that means. And an additional $773,000 for expanding and making sure that the program as a whole is able to take care of our needs. Now, this is somewhat of a difficult chart to make, and it's one of those situations I don't think come up in education too often. We weren't fully implementing anything, and either the consortium the first year, which was the year before last, and so funds were presented and we had time to make it work. We started this year, and what that meant was there were funds that had to roll over. That's a good thing. It's also, strangely enough, hard to spend money too, as fast as they want you to. But if you look at this chart here, if I can follow you through here, what was our budget in 2012-13? Well, that's our maintenance of effort. That's what we get as our basic amount. And then as you follow through the chart, there's rollover. We have what's called the consortium money. That was for the beginning of what we needed to do, which was the diploma program. Then that was rolled over into 2015-16, this year, where we started the diploma program. And what that's done is we're very solvent. I'll let you know that right now. But it also has a complex part of it, because instead of just having a budget, we had not only the maintenance of effort money, and we had the consortium money from the first year, we also had that for this last year, and we actually had to spend money out of 4 different budgets. Initially, we had to make sure that we spent all of our consortium money. And in fact, that has to be completely spent from the first year by this December. If not, they'll say you didn't need it. And the maintenance of effort money will probably, because the things have changed back and forth, but will probably have the same tags to it. I don't think eventually we'll have that problem of not spending, but it's something we're constantly trying to do, and this is while the state of California is changing the program as we move forward too. Every year there's a telling of what we've done as far as our plans, have we met those expectations, and every year they've changed the formula as far as what the specifics we need to follow. So if you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see a yearly amount is going to hover somewhere between $2,250 and probably higher. I mean, and definitely higher. And the reason I say that is it is less, the consortium money was less for next year as it was this year for 2 reasons. One, we have extra money at this point. And 2, this was the year that we've implemented the diploma program. So who decides this? The consortium does, of the different members. And as each one of us as members have certain obligations and certain needs, we as a consortium decide where that money goes, but to keep us whole at the same time. That was probably more difficult to understand than it even looks like in the chart here, but I apologize for that. And about halfway through the year, they decided to meld the money together, so we do have one budget for next year, really. The second chart, if you will, that's probably a little confusing.
what we intended to do straight off from the beginning of the year was have the high school diploma program, as well as the basic adult education program, and the high school equivalency GED program. After talking about it and seeing how things had started so slowly, we decided in terms of ed services that we would let the college continue with the GED program for one more year, and we'll pick it up this year, which is probably a very good idea. If you look in the upper left large block, there's also says lynda.com CTE training. That was something we wanted to implement during the year. Lynda.com, we'll talk about it at probably a different time when we're requesting money for it, but it is an online video-based instructional program for, I don't know the exact number, but many, many, many different CTE programs. Mass amount as far as digital design, digital software, how to code and whatnot, photography, there's theater arts, there's a tremendous amount. And the reason I wanted to go with this lynda.com is because we have holes in our programs here and there as far as the CTE part, and in the fall I'll be presenting where we are at that point. But also we have whole schools that do not have CTE, and I'm talking about like Mount Madonna. And if you think about those students that really need that training, there are holes in the program. So we pushed it till next year. We also pushed this GED, as I said. But meanwhile, we've been doing more. Tomorrow morning will be the first of 6 classes of welding at Christopher High School with a partnership between Adult Ed and the Community Education Program at Gavilan College. That way, we're starting to fulfill another obligation of the consortium, which is CTE, and what's looked at as short-term CTE. Is there some training that isn't ongoing? We're not talking 2-year or 4-year necessarily, but that we can get people employed and do things. So tomorrow, it's going to start out small. We're going to have somebody adult ed, and Gavilan's going to have somebody, and Adult Ed's going to put some money into the program. It will then benefit CTE for Christopher High School and the welding program. It will benefit Gavilan College community, which is our community. It'll benefit Adult Ed. Those types of partnerships are what I'm trying to help form to get the pathways that we need to have. Because it's fine and dandy to have a class at a high school and you get to do something and it's real neat and it gets you excited, but if it has nowhere to go and you can't take it for the rest of the time you're there and you don't know where it connects to as far as a post-secondary school, it's not a pathway. And whether it's in the CTE realm of our regular education programs or adult ed or Gavilan College, CTE is the thing. That's what we have to come up with, these pathways. So anyway, next year, I want to be able to work with everyone to come up with even more collaboration. What I'm trying to do is start from the center and work out. The center being Gavilan College. They're right there. They have needs and program, and to be candid, a lot of money has gone into community colleges for CTE. And having that kind of partnership would be a good thing. For instance, something to look at in the CTE realm, which may also impact adult ed. They are beginning a drone photography program. They're going to be at their new campus in Coyote. And our own photography programs are looking at drones, but they're kind of hemmed in because the city, and we're trying to work that out, is real difficult. Getting the partnerships would be nice. Automotive. Well, whether it's a plane or it's a car or a small engine, there's some basic things about automotive that are all the same. And if we can change a little bit of our curriculum to be able to fit into something like aviation, we start having these pathways. And that could be a very good one for adult ed. And so as far as the future of adult ed, we had the remaining programs, the basic adult ed and the GED program, and we make the collaborations and the pathways, which is also the other half of my job, the CTE. And the idea is it's a win-win-win going all the way through. Let's talk about this year specifically as far as adult education, what we were able to do. Back in August, I received a list of about 25 names and address phone numbers from Morgan Hill, because they had to kind of pick up some of the slack when we and this whole area did not have anywhere to go to get a diploma in adult ed. Of the 25, I was able to get 10 students come in and register. At that point in time, I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a long year. But by May 31st, we were able to have 114 sign up. Now, this is a different kind of program. It's not the same as if you have 114 in a regular school and all 114 show up. Of that 114, half of them, that's all they did is you registered. And then we found out they moved, they did this and that. It's very transient in that sense. But the 50 or so that kept coming, they're doing something. And one of the things I was able to see through the year was, and look at transcripts, is there would be this push by an individual, and they would be able to do, say, 10, 15, 20, maybe 40 credits. Then they disappear. 5, 10 years later, come back, do another 40 credits, and then over a 10-year period, finally get their diploma. Well, whether they got it initially earlier or they get it later, they got it. And the ages that I'll show you later kind of shows that same thing. So we did have 2 signups of adult basic education, which is just students coming in. We had the software for it, and then be able to work a little more one-on-one to help someone's math or help somebody's English skills. On May 30th, we had our ceremony. Now, we did have 23 high school graduates this year. So when I look at that and the 10 people that I started with at the beginning of the year, I was real happy to see that. 17 of them attended with some Casey students. We call them Casey students. I'm sure they don't like that. But essentially, those are the students that did everything, qualified for everything, but the Casey. And now, since the Casey has been stopped, they have an opportunity to get their diploma. So they're coming in as they can. And looking at the transcripts, there's at least 10 students that, if they really make sure they do it, are going to graduate as well by this August 2nd when we have our summer school graduation. So I would say, all in all, a good year, especially considering how it started out. The hours, staff, and the facility. The district put in some really good, needed money for some portables that weren't looking real strong to start out the year. And with new carpet, new furniture, it's nice. I'll just say that. It's very nice, and it's very professional. We are commented by students and whatnot that, oh, this is nice. This looks good. Because a lot of them expect to go into, unfortunately, that room that's not used that much, or that room that's kind of is taken care of, sort of, and it's not that way. It's a nice looking facility. And then we bought some Chromebooks so that anybody and everybody could be a part of online programming that we do. And our hours, going in, I didn't think it made any sense to have the traditional, you're doing the diploma, so you're Monday and Wednesday, 6 to 9. Can't make it this week, well, hopefully you'll be here next week. We have an online program, 24/7, you can access it. You may need some help, though, here and there, some more than others. it didn't also make sense to me that here you get a job, and the job is Monday and Wednesday evening. So it's like, oh, that's too bad. You know, you don't get to do this. So we made a decision that we would try to be open 5 to 6 days a week at different times to hit as many people as we could. So the Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 6 to 9, Friday, 5 to 7, so you can still go out if you have to. Saturday morning, 9 to 12, and yeah, we do get people at those times. And Tuesday, if somebody came to me and said, I can only do Tuesday, then I'll say, well, why don't you come on in? Because I'm there 6 to 7 or 8 or whatever, I need to be there anyway. So just come on in. In fact, the office hours are 12 to 6, and if that's the only thing you can do is during the day, if I'm there or if the secretary's there on Annika, come on in. We've got Chromebooks. We can help you. I don't want the fact that we're not open when you need us to prohibit your growth. And I think that was taken very well this year. It helped a lot of students. Our teachers and staff, Rick Charvet, and that's not Jose Franchise. It's actually supposed to be Jose Franchi. Sorry, Jose. Our teachers, and Annika Mandel, our secretary. She probably is, I'm so glad to have her. She's just been fabulous. But she actually tendered her resignation. And, but, you know, that's okay because she's going into law school. And so I just want you to know, if you got anybody that really wants to get to law school, 4 months in and out, you're there. The age range of our graduates average 24 and a half years. 18 years, of course, would be the lowest, and 5 students that graduated were in the 18-year age from Mount Madonna or Advanced Path. Give or take a couple months, because once they got moved over, we didn't see them for a couple months. And then they came in. It was like, okay, well, I got to figure this out here. And they did, and they came in, and we were able to work with them. The oldest was 39, 18 to 20 years. You can see 8 students, 21 to 24, 5, 25, 37, 31, 39, 3. And all of the 114 were spread out about like that. So there's a lot of stories here. And I know most of you were able to make the graduation and hear a couple of them. There are a lot of stories that could bring a tear to your eye. There's a lot of other demographics, of course, that go to the state to make sure that we're working with as many people as we can. Yes, some that have had time in jail, prison. Others that, you know, life just hit them and knocked them down. But they're able to come back. There's our graduation. So I guess, are there any questions at this time?
Yes, trustee Bass.
And upon starting the program, do people finish in a year? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, it's really, you know, you always hear, well, you meet them where they are. That has to do with their education as far as what they know and they're able to learn. In this case, it's what are the transcripts saying? And I was surprised at how many would have only 10 credits to do, and they haven't tried in 10 years. And then others would come in and it's like, oh, we can get through 140, sure. Well, yeah, if they keep going after it, and maybe the GED is something they'd rather do, and we can go that way as well. A couple of students that went to GED and didn't think that's what they wanted, and they came back to us. I put them on some basic math and English just to kind of, you know, it's been a long time. In fact, they were cousins, and they were both in their 50s. And they were able to kind of know what they know, learn to know what they know, I guess I should say. And then they decided they were going to get that diploma. That's what they wanted to do. They eventually actually moved to a different city and continued up there because they wanted their transcripts. So it really depends on where they are. And if somebody were to come in, the online program we use, Cyber High, if they can put 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, 6 weeks, they'll have 10 credits. So depending on where you are, how motivated you are, how much time you have, those are all variables and many more.
And they need
180. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, board members? Yes, trustee Rosso.
Thank you for the presentation. So I found the funding, of course, very confusing, and it seems like there was big rollovers, over multiple years. Right? So it's not clear to me what the annual ongoing funding is.
On that chart, the very bottom, that's what I mentioned that's typical of what it'll be, with changes possible within the consortium,
You're talking
depending on
about
what you need.
You're talking about the 226?
Yes,
So that's the ongoing, but the current,
that's for next year,
for next year.
yeah.
But the current funds are in excess of,
The current, see, that doesn't show what we have spent out of it. Next year, I'll be back with specific amounts, where we are, and moving forward.
okay. And how many, I guess, right now, where are the classes being held largely? I mean, are you using over there off of Murray? Is that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's the primary facility?
That is the facility, yeah.
Okay, because like you said, you have something going at Christopher.
Christopher is in partnership with Gavilan, yeah.
Okay.
And the CTE programs may do that.
Right, but there's nothing you're not incorporating anything at Advanced Path, I mean, it's no longer Advanced Path now, but at the facilities anywhere else, you're talking?
Not adult ed-related programs.
Okay.
In the fall, when I present, we have the final plan and whatnot, 5-year plan, and I'm able to present where we are and where we're going for CTE, that'll become a lot clearer as to pathways that we have taken care of, areas we need help with, and those are specific to each site.
And how many students are you projecting to serve with the current funding level?
Well, once again, because it is also an online program, and we through Cyber High, we have a 3-year contract, was around $27,000, and that actually was for the whole district, and it's utilized by adult ed, it's utilized by credit recovery, as well as independent studies at at Gilroy High and at Christopher High. And this summer, it's being utilized for the PASS program in the summer school. And it can, as many people that we have in our district could use it.
Further questions? Well, I'd like to thank you for coming and giving us this
You're
report.
very welcome, it's my honor.
And most of us were at your graduation.
Yes, thank you.
I found it very inspiring, the young woman who spoke to
Yeah.
us. Good for them.
Yeah.
Getting their diploma, regardless of age. I mean, a lot of people are going to live to be 90, so if you're only 35, why not,
Got a lot of time.
right?
Thank you very
So
much.
thank you very much, Greg. We're going to go back on our agenda because we're happy to see that Leo and Janan from WCI Architects are here. Welcome. And the three of us serve on the facilities subcommittee, and we really felt like it was a good time to come in and update the rest of the board on the steps that are being taken regarding our new elementary school. So thank you.
Good evening, Board President, Board members. We're a little bit late, but better late than never. And so a lot of traffic, obviously. They had the the parade for the 49ers or the Giants or whoever it was.
Wait.
Oh, what was it? Oh, Warriors, I'm sorry. The parade for the Warriors. Anyway, we're here to talk about the new school property, the bridging document for the new school property, and we'll have some, I think we've got several slides. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Janan and Leo and let them speak on the school designs, and then I'll come back at the end and talk a little bit about the other parallel path, which is getting the property ready.
Thank you this evening. We were stuck in some traffic getting here this evening. We've come here many evenings, and this is the worst time that we've had. But both my kids did go to the rally today. My son and my daughter were both there, and my grandson. So they said it was very exciting to be there. So that's shout out for Dub Nation, as they say. I'm going to have, as you may hear in my voice, I've been fighting with a little bit of the bug here for the last few days. So I'm going to have Janan make the presentation today, and I'm going to be the official note taker. So I'm going to turn it over to her right now. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for having us. What we were hoping to do today is present you with a sort of culmination of the conceptual design phase that we've been going through for the past few months. It's basically a springboard for us for getting the schematic documents put together and the bridging package completed over the summer. So I'll just dive right in. Alvaro asked us to keep it short and snappy, so we're gonna push through. Oops. Just in brief, a quick recap. The site is the little triangular shaped piece of land with nothing on it in the top left corner of the drawing, adjacent to Solorzano Middle School, surrounded by the Eagle Ridge Golf Course and the Uvis Creek Nature Preserve. This is the revised space program, totaling about 85,000 square feet, and at this point we have managed to capture all the comments that have been made. At our last board presentation, I know the superintendent was interested to know how we looked in terms of library space, and we were right about the average across the elementary schools with that, I think it's 3,600 square feet or so. So that looks good. In recap, also, the multipurpose room is equal in size to the Rucker Elementary School multipurpose room and designed in a similar way because we understand that that's been a very successful facility for the district. We've got the district loading all accounted for now, so you can see how many students the classrooms will hold based on, we've sort of looked at it at a couple of different ways, but we're making sure we can hit 800 students with the school, and that should hopefully take care of any future expansion of the student body. So, you know, hopefully you won't be coming back in a couple years looking at where to put portables on the school site.
And just for the benefit of everyone, this has been a very inclusive process. So we have teacher voices. Vince is part of the committee, principals, administrators, and we've developed this even graphic over a course of many meetings with Jen and the committee. So, so there's subcommittees where we have detailed conversations about programmatic needs, and there's also high-level conversations, which of course some of you board trustees are part of as well. So we thank everybody for participating in this process.
It's been a great process, and we've enjoyed working with you all tremendously. So thank you for that as well. And I pulled up the slide here that shows the rounds of different meetings and things that we have had. And as you can see, most of them are filled in with only two at the bottom right there remaining. That was our original proposed meeting schedule. Now, we may have some more facilities design committee meetings if the district wants to have them. But we have gathered enough input to push forward and do the schematic designs for the school at this point. And some of these last remaining meetings are mostly technical in nature, either to kickstart the process for the design build team or to confirm some of the assumptions that we've made about the approaches we're taking on the site. Okay, I'm going to go backwards now. This was a site analysis that we did early on. It just looks at some of the characteristics of the site that have driven the way we've made decisions as a group and the way we've established goals and priorities. I think primarily the natural surrounding and the solar component, trying to shelter from the sun and be comfortable, as well as capture the energy from the sun to meet the net zero goals. Ultimately, we have arrived at this site organization bubble diagram, and this is basically, it doesn't necessarily describe buildings per se, but functions and how they relate to each other and how they relate to the surrounding environment. So starting from the roads, particularly from Club Drive, which is our only access, we progress in zones moving in towards the triangle point. So we've got our most public functions at the street level, and that's basically access. Then we get into the buildings, and we've got the buildings that need the most access up front: admin, library, multi-use, kindergarten, which needs access for drop-off, back to the classroom buildings. Then we proceed to the play areas, and finally the fields. You'll see that you see a multi-purpose with mezzanine bubble stuck next to the two-story admin library bubble. We've done a couple different rounds of conversation on that idea, and I think there were two main drivers for coming up with that strategy. The first was to try to free up as much frontage at Club Drive as we can to facilitate what's likely to be a fairly congested parking and drop-off situation. And the benefit of putting a two-story building adjacent to the multipurpose is that the multipurpose is already a two-story building. There's sort of free space in the high level of the multipurpose, but you can't get up to it. You need to have an elevator and you need to have stairs. So if we put another building that has that right next to it, we buy some free real estate, essentially, inside the multipurpose room, and we can add this mezzanine, which will hopefully bring us closer to accommodating the full body of the school in one sitting. I don't know that we'll get all the way there, but we'll get closer than we would without it. So there were also a lot of functions that wanted to be next to one another in that building, and I have a little diagram of how that building works, so we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Sorry. My screen is moving and this one is not. Okay. I apologize. Okay. So this is the conceptual site plan. We now are looking at actual building forms where the bubbles were. And you can see we've got a sort of an L-shaped kindergarten wing on the right side of the site there. There was a desire to have a sort of a separate but connected kindergarten wing that would have its own center of activity but not feel closed off from the campus either. So we've done that by having this open courtyard that connects all the buildings, and then that courtyard bleeds into the kindergarten play courtyard that the kindergarten lies around. The little dash lines next to the building represent roof or shade area. There's thanks. Perfect. The two-story classroom wing depicted here is, and also shown in this diagram. I'll try to be brief in summarizing what we were trying to capture here. But essentially, we wanted a building that didn't feel too imposing and large. So we were breaking down the mass and not just having a big double block of classrooms. Because it's an elementary school and we have little kids and we want to create a welcoming environment for them. So we tried to break down this building by creating this open breezeway passageway through that would connect you to the beautiful views and allow you to circulate through and also have some one-story and some two-story components to the building. So it's not just one large building with a front, a big imposing facade. We're trying to make it feel a bit warmer and smaller. And the roof form, which is just really a diagram, we're trying to have a very active roof. We really want to be able to utilize the roof for solar and shade. Meanwhile, we also want to try to create attic spaces for mechanical equipment. So you might often see mechanical equipment on roofs. That's a sort of a way that we often do buildings, but we won't be getting our solar net zero goals. We won't hit them so easily if we use up all our space. So we've been thinking a lot about how we're going to design the roof of this school. There's a sort of a knuckle, I guess you could call it, right in the center here, where we looked at a sort of a patio space instead of maybe having an enclosed corridor upstairs, an open corridor that would overlook the courtyard. And I do have a further detailed picture of that coming up. But finally, here we've got the multi-purpose with the amphitheater overlooking the courtyard, the outdoor covered lunch adjacent to the play space, and the admin and library adjacent to the parking with your main entry here for students during the day is a big gated opening that can just be opened. You close it off and then people can come in through the main lobby and progress through that building to gain access to the school. And then if you have after-hours event where all of this is closed down, you can come around this plaza here and enter the multi-use and have access to the library or the multi-use building without having to open any of the other campus buildings up. And this is just also another diagram of a way that the components of this building would go together. The two-story multi-use space with the library right next to it and the admin and a little breezeway that would enable you to move through. And then an integral covered lunch area. So this is an enlarged plan of the classroom wing with the courtyard in this circle. This is the lower level here. We've got grades 1 through 3 and the lab spaces. We're trying to put the lab spaces in the central part so they can be connected to open up to outdoor classrooms, particularly the Flex Lab, which will have your science and art curriculum. We think there's a great opportunity for teachers to expand the lab work by using outdoor classroom features as well. We've got a sort of shall we call it an atrium stair core here that can be a sort of an auditorium seating type space as well. Going upstairs, we've got the 4th and 5th grade classrooms and some of the adjacent programs for them. And like I said, we were looking at this sort of patio space that would overlook the courtyard, so you could have a sense of feeling connected to the campus as you're, maybe walking from your classroom to lunch or to the bathroom or to the library or something. Okay. These are some pictures of, for example, what an atrium stair might look like, a stair that's also an auditorium seating, kind of flexible learning environment type of space. This picture here is an active hallway. They have writing surfaces and little focused curriculum sort of activities on this wall and small spaces for students to sit and do more individual learning. So these are some of the ideas we're trying to incorporate in our circulation spaces in the classroom wing. And then this is just a picture of a more of a 21st century classroom idea where the classroom has a double wall, a sliding wall that opens and can become a double large space. And those two classrooms are positioned next to, through this window, a kind of a lab support type space. So they could open the whole space up and do more lab style activities without actually having to go to a lab. Okay. This is a diagram. These are some drawings of the multi-use admin building, which is quite a complex. This here is a sort of at the site level. You can see the courtyard here, the breezeway through to the parking, and the entry plaza. Off the breezeway, you have the main multipurpose room, the stage, and the amphitheater. Off the backside here, you have the kitchen, which would be adjacent to the loading zone and the garbage area. The main multipurpose room has the outdoor eating off this side with the play yard next to it. So that's very similar to the site plan that we just saw. It's just drawn a little bit larger. And then you can sort of see it even larger here, the way things are connected. So we've got the staff component of the admin sort of off by itself so that they don't have to feel like they're eating lunch and being inundated with work at the same time, so that they get an actual break when it's their chance to be in the lounge. And some of these functions, like the after-school program or some of the childcare support that's happening during your after-hours education for your adult ed, your parent training, your migrant education programs. There's a functionality of they're using the library upstairs and they need a parent room or an office space to do some other functions at the same time. So we're going to try to load those off of this breezeway so that, once again, you can selectively open and close the parts of the facility that need to be open without having to open a whole bunch of other stuff up. This is, we had our landscape architect come and do a presentation and gather input. So this was their landscape proposal, and we have had some comments that they're working on making adjustments to. Essentially, they were looking at outdoor classrooms off of the main building. So they have a sort of, shall we say, a lower level outdoor classroom space here that I think they were thinking of like a formal seating arrangement. There was some talk of Gabion seats and possibly a small outdoor amphitheater sort of space. And then in this one over here, a more formalized, maybe a viewing platform and some of those binoculars like you would see at any kind of lookout to enable the students to observe the nature in the nature preserve and take notes or have a lab type of activity that centers around the outdoors. They've come up with some plantings that would foster butterflies or silkworms, things that students might have a study curriculum around. They've got the play structures located here for the 1 through 5, and then there's kinder has its own play structures here. We've got this sort of bioretention area, which they've proposed as certain types of grasses and possibly having boulders that the kids could climb in for natural play in that area. You know, we have our blacktop play functions, and we've had some discussion on what should be on the blacktop and how many tether balls and how many basketballs, so they can get all that. They've proposed an interesting idea here, and I have a slide. This is an amphitheater, the outdoor stage seating to be in turf. And there's a picture here of a school in Morgan Hill that did their outdoor stage with a turf. This is an artificial turf amphitheater seating. So it doesn't have to be, but it's a really nice soft surface. So it creates a large amount of seating out of these little concrete curves. So these are some pictures. This is a viewing platform. This is a little track for the kindergartners to ride their tricycles around. This is an example of the viewing platform, the binocular or the telescope that you could put, and just some ideas for what to do in the hardscape. You know, we can activate concrete by something as simple as imprints that engage children on a more free intellectual level, I guess, rather than a guided one. And that concludes our presentation. So we are planning to spend the next few months very busily doing our schematic design, and we hope to come back to the group with some much, like, really concrete-looking building proposals at the next go-round. Thank you.
Jeanette, do we have any questions from board members? What a nice possibilities. Well, we really appreciate you coming down, and sorry you were involved in so much traffic on the way.
Thanks for waiting for us.
Yeah. Oh, we have a question from
Yeah, I just
Mr.
have
Good.
one question. So you talked a little bit about the roofs and designing it so that it would be ready for solar panels and what have you. How about can you talk a little bit about the durability of the roof? What exactly you're planning in the long term? Because we have a lot of roof problems here.
Well, the most solar-ready roof is a standing seam metal roof. You can clip a solar panel to it rather than having to build a structure that penetrates your waterproofing to hold the solar panels. So that's really the roof material that we're thinking of at this point. There are other roof materials that can do solar. There's built-in PV on those white roll-on roofs, those plastic vinyl roofs. But they're not very efficient compared with those big glass solar panels that you see that Borrego is probably putting up.
And standing seam, that's not a term I'm familiar with. What is that?
That's like the roof at Solorzano Middle School.
The metal roof.
Metal roof that has those ribs in it. Yeah, that's the seam. Yeah.
Excellent.
And in general, the advantage of having the roofs set for solar is they will be pitched. And the number one problem you have with roofing is when you have a flat roof and getting a 1/4 inch per foot slope, and they never really get it right, and so you always end up with pockets where water sits. And that's where roofing, number one problem with architecture and construction is roofing. But whenever you have pitched roofs, the roof actually slopes to a downspout or to a gutter to go out, you almost eliminate 9% of your issues you have with standing water on your roofs.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Metal and pitched roofs, music to my ears. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Rosso.
I did want to make a couple comments. Just generally, again, talking about the site, it's a triangle. Most school sites have multiple access points. This is going to only have one access right from the front. And we already know that's impacted area. And, I mean, that's been one of my, how would you call it, preoccupations about, bottlenecks. We don't want to create bottlenecks. We want to make sure that we're working everything we can. And I think they did a pretty darn good job of, I think what we come up with, something like 160, 140, 150 parking.
We've got, well, we took as a minimum the original proposal that went to CDE, and that had 115 spaces. And I think at this point, all the parking layouts I've played with are around 150. So,
And
we've
it's-
identified
There's
75
kind of two
staff
different
parking, and
loops going on, a main one for drop-off and everything else, because there's no on-street parking over there. Won't be. And then, of course, the service and
the bus.
bus. And then, kind of borrowing with the big, what do you call it? We want to talk about walking and accessible routes so that to encourage being able to safely get on there, other than necessarily just every student depends on a car, to get there. And I think there's possibilities there, and we know that the study is still yet to be done, even though you say it's underway, right? But that's one of the big areas of concern. But also, I think one other aspect about the site that was very nice is the courtyard, the big open courtyard that's there, which, as I understand, could hold the whole student body. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's about 30,000 square feet. open space, so it's like 6
In the
darker
courtyard.
empty rooms.
And, you know, which is also supported with the amphitheater setting. So, and also a covered lunch area that's part of the roofing system. So that the students literally, you know, the roofing would come down, instead of a lot of places we have to, kind of an afterthought, think of, you know, that you're gonna have the kids eating outside, and now we gotta build a shade structure for them. So the way this is kind of being thought out was the roofing system, somewhat like Gilroy High School, Student Center has the overhang on the sides for tables on the outside. This will have somewhat similar consideration for student housing, so it'll be integral part of the system. And then, well, there were a lot of other areas we talked about, bathroom, accessibility, you know, the way that they oriented the building so that it would, you know, all different uses would have shared use with the bathroom facilities. And then we talked about things like accessibility for inside and outside, because once they're out there on the fields, that they have access to, you know, easy access to facilities. So there's a lot of good stuff there, a lot of good thought. I think they did a good job.
I got to tell you, you did a great recap of the design. It was, you're going to have to do it for us next time. That was excellent. Right on the money. Thank you.
Any more questions for WLC? So I just want to briefly update you on the other parts. You know, there's a parallel track. There's the track where we are going through the bridging document phase to get our contractor to begin construction. The other half is, of course, you know, the beginning was the acquiring the property, and part of that was for us to vet out whether or not it would, CDE, the California Department of Education, would accept that and go through their checklist, and also to go to the Department of Toxic Substance Control. And we began with the PEA phase, which is the preliminary endangerment assessment phase. We completed that and found that we had naturally occurring asbestos, so we moved into what they call the RAW, or the Removal Action Work Plan phase. Just today at 2 o'clock, met with the members of both the Department of Toxic Substance Control, California Environmental Quality Act, the CEQA people, our consultants, and so on and so forth. And that began the process of moving forward with that part. So these are two parallel tracks. At the same time, we're waiting and expect to get our transportation study in the next 2 weeks. We are getting our survey study back in the next 2 weeks. We are going to be moving forward with a geotechnical survey as well, where they'll go and drill the holes and do soil characterizations and do all the engineering for the soils. And all that gets put into the bridging document and gets handed to the design build teams sometime hopefully in October. So still tentative schedule, still planning on going through the division of the state architect from October, November until next June or so, and then hopefully beginning construction on the site at that point. So we're moving as quickly as we can. We've jumped all of our hurdles. We're 70% completed with CEQA, and the remedial action work plan, we should have our plan in place sometime. I think we start the preliminary in September. We're actually going to turn in the draft plan, then they accept the draft plan, and then so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that have to happen, but our timing is really good right now. So timing is really good to open a school or to be completed with the school in June of 2020. So that's our schedule as it sits right now, and so far I don't see any reason that won't fly. A little bit of breather room for the division of the state architect, 6-8 months, but other than that, we're in pretty good shape. So a lot of work, maybe about 5 years worth. Are there any questions on any of the testing or anything that's going on? It's been approved by the board, of course, already. The only one that's left is the geotechnical. And we'll be bringing that in August as a ratification because we have to move forward.
Just a quick clarification. So again, the long-term projection is that we're trying to target having the school ready by when?
June of 2020, so that the teachers can move in, we can get all the furniture, get everything moved in, and be open for August of 2020.
August 2020.
August 2020 will be opening, whatever the date is at that calendar. August 12th, whatever it is, will be opening day for school.
Assuming everything moves according to schedule.
Yeah,
it'll be August.
that's our tentative plan as of now, yes.
We'll see what board members will be there for the.
Thank you, Mr. Bombachi. Thank you. And also Janann and Leo, thank you again. I'd just like to comment that we spent about a year on the facilities master plan.
That is
And
correct.
so, thank you for respecting some of our concerns, our wishes. Because why did we do that big facilities master plan if we're not going to try to integrate some of the ideas that was a huge process.
And you know, that's something I had brought up yesterday at one of our retreats, was that process. Started out with the demographer telling us we needed a school, and then it was the process of trying to find the property. The master plan comes into effect so that we can get our bond. Once we get the bond, then we start moving towards getting the district standards to prepare for the bridging document, then on to the design build team, then on to construction and a completion of the school on that parallel track, and then the other one is a lot dicier. But anyway, that's what, you know, those are all the steps that you've seen happen are the steps necessary to take to build a school and do it the right way, because we're taking a lot of the information from the master plan, obviously. Master plan was necessary to get the bond, but also to set up the school. They already had a lot of the information, and we just gleaned a lot of that from it, so. Very, very well worth standards, everything, very well worth it. So.
But this is great. It's good to have these updates periodically, since the
Yes.
whole board doesn't sit through those marathon meetings.
From now on, they will be monthly. They will be
What?
monthly. From now on,
Oh,
they will
good.
be monthly.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, we've asked Jim to come to the second meeting in the month to give him a monthly update in terms of the progress that we're making in the new construction of the new elementary school. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Leo, and thank you, Janine.
Okay. Now we're going to go back to our agenda and proceed with E, Student Services End-of-Year Report. This is an information item, and Barbara Brown will be presenting this to us.
So, good evening. As a former teacher, I hope you did all your pre-reading. No, just joking. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to reference some pages, and it's meant for you to use this document moving forward as kind of a blueprint, and wasn't intended for you to peruse the whole entire document, but due to the Brown Act, we had to provide it for you. Okay? So with that, good evening, Assistant Superintendent Mesa, Board President Pat Midgard, and board members. Tonight, I will be sharing with you an end-of-year update and future recommendations for special ed. And although Student Services does oversee other services such as health services and school link services, this presentation is focused on special ed. Okay. When I came to Gilroy Unified 4 years ago, there were many recommendations that were made by a study commissioned by the board through School Innovations and Achievement. And since that report was presented November of 2013, I've been providing the board with periodic updates. This will be my last report for you, and some of the recommendations of SI&I have been achieved, and there are other recommendations that continue to need improvement. So this year, my staff and I have developed several new procedures, handbooks, and forms, and these include a 504 procedural handbook, a special education procedural handbook, student study team handbook, and numerous procedures for ensuring our IEPs are compliant. And I won't go into all of those different things, but we have designed approximately 12 to 15 different procedures this year in special ed to help our staff be compliant and to provide quality services to students. Also, the Student Services website was updated with helpful links and parent resources. The responsibility for keeping the site updated and current will need to be assigned to someone in the Student Services Department moving forward, and hopefully that will continue to be kept current. There you go. We also provided focus training to all special education staff, including paraeducators, speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, school psychologists, and special education teachers. And the two program specialists offered after-school workshops for special education teachers on IEP writing and SACE training. SACE is our online web IEP program that we use. Two of our staff members were certified as TCI trainers for staff, as TCI trainers for district staff members to learn to de-escalate behavior and use restraint appropriately as a last resource. There is difficulty providing this, the mandatory training is due to the lack of substitutes available for teachers and paraeducators because it is a 5-day training. So with all of the other training going on, we're not able to offer that this year. However, we have staff members that need to be recertified, and so that will be a compliance issue next year if we're not able to get the training done. So, I'm sorry, I think I went too far. Okay. So based on staff input, see, mine's changing and that's not changing again. That's where I'm getting confused. Thank you. So based on staff input, we created a professional development plan for all special education staff regarding student behavior interventions that will be implemented in 17 and 18, and you approved that contract tonight. That was the Insights to Behavior training that will be provided for paraeducators and special education staff. And then we also researched curriculum materials to update what we offer our students in special education classes, especially in the middle and high schools this year, although we have increased our elementary curriculum, and that is to be ordered this summer and provided in 17-18. Okay, so I just want to give you an update on our student and staffing information. I don't have the number. Slide 6 or 7. Thank you. And I've presented these figures to you in the past, and I'm just providing an update from October. And we had a 25% decrease in speech services this school year, with a slight increase in autism. Overall, the number of students in special ed decreased by 126 students, while at the same time, the overall enrollment increased to 12,322. Mr. Mesa sent me an email today with a different number for the enrollment, and I'd be happy to correct that for you and send you an updated slide. That figure we did get as of June 1st through Kermit. So I'll work with Mr. Mesa to correct that. But based on that figure, we decreased our overall enrollment to 10.7. And as I've shared with you in the past, we need that number to be below 10%. The California Department of Education monitors that number and does put you on their radar for audits if you are continually over your 10% enrollment for the district. So continued monitoring in this area is necessary. And I just want to point out that this chart is only giving you the primary disability of students. So while it says that we have 383 students with speech services, that's the number of students with speech services only, or as their primary disability. We actually, for example, there are 943 students who receive speech services in the district, and I'm going to talk about that later. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure I'm on the right slide because it keeps moving around. The overall projections for the 17-18 school year, we are increasing our certificated full-time equivalents by 2.7. What was inadvertently left off of this chart is that that includes the difficulty we have in staffing positions. And so I think I'm on the wrong slide. There we go. So what was left off was the contracted positions in the teaching area, so our RSP and SDC teachers. So I just wanted to let you know that for the 2017-18 school year, we will have currently we will have three contractor teachers working in an RSP position and 6 working in a special day class position. And that was left off on that chart. The next slide, when it comes up, is our paraeducator numbers, and we project those to remain steady going into the next school year. We've had some movement around with students with identified paraeducators who have now graduated or we have faded, and so we're able to fill any open areas with existing staff. So that's really good news. I think that's the first time we can say we're starting the school year out at the same level. For our behavior support assistants, those are what we call our BSAs. They provide classroom support in programs with intensive behavior needs or may be assigned to an individual student with intensive behavioral goals and needs. And our special circumstance instructional assistants, our SCIAs, provide support for programs which need special health needs, such as toileting in our preschool programs, or may provide individual assistance to a student with physical or medical needs. Increased training has decreased the need to use contracted BSAs, which are assigned to students that have very intensive behavioral needs. Overall, our behavior support staff has decreased due to graduating students and reducing needs of students. This year, 5 students with a 1-to-1 assigned BSA were faded this year. However, that doesn't reflect the number that were added. A more rigorous process is recommended to review and manage the placement of individual behavior support staff. So I told you we would come back and revisit the speech numbers. So as of June 1st, 70.6% of students with IEPs have speech services, which should really be in the 30 to 40% range. And so what we did is a review on students who receive services, and we actually focused on middle and high school students with speech services because typically at that point, students are exited from speech services. They've either made the progress they're going to make, and what we found is some students, a number of students have very minimal speech services and or on consult, and so many of those should be exited out of speech. And so that information is left to be addressed at the beginning of next school year. Also, this year was the first year of a 3-year program called Smart Ed Tech, which is a online speech program that for preschool, elementary, and middle school students. And I don't have a more comprehensive report right now, but we were able to provide some parent training so that they can access that program through the website, and students can use that at home as well, hopefully accelerating their progress and being able to exit from speech. 17.2% of students with IEPs receive OT services, and so like speech, this percentage is considered high for most school districts, and the same review was completed to identify students that should be reviewed next year for exiting. When students are not, needs are not able to be met in the district must look at other options. Our first look, depending on student needs, is the Santa Clara County Office of Education or a non-public school placement. Those are two different types of placements. Many of our, what we call NPS or non-public school placements are for students with severe emotional disability or severe autism. And many times these students also have severe behavior issues along with their disability. Most students placed in the county office programs are severely intellectually disabled and are deaf and hard of hearing population. We have other students in other programs, but those are the two main programs. And the recommendation for the future would be to continue to analyze the number of students that are placed outside of the district to determine if the district should be creating their own program and bringing those students back to serve at a lower rate. Students require residential placements for a variety of reasons and situations, and residential placements are deemed appropriate when the therapeutic and residential components of a program are necessary in order for the student to receive an educational benefit. And students who require residential programs are those for whom the educational needs are intertwined or inseparable from their emotional needs, and the determination by the IEP team that the student requires the therapeutic and rehabilitation services to benefit. We currently have 4 students in a residential placement outside of California and 1 residential placement in California. And we are projecting that we will increase this by 2 students. One will be outside of California and the other we are still looking. And we always look in California first. There are currently 6 LVNs at 6 school sites serving 10 students with medical needs. 3 of these students have IEPs, and the medical needs include G-tube feedings, catheters, diabetic care, and seizures. And then I put this in, I didn't put this in before, but school nurses also support students with IEPs along with all students in the district. And a health appraisal or a health assessment is necessary for students who are being assessed for special ed. That's for initial assessments and or our 3-year assessments. And so our nurses did 709 health assessments this year. And this year we had 4.6 school nurses. They wrote 516 care plans, which includes regular ed students, attended 78 504 meetings and 13 IEP meetings. So our nurses are very busy. They, of course, do a lot of other things. Assistant Superintendent Alvaro Mesa shared at the last board meeting as he shared that special education revenue is received from federal, state, and local resources. And overall, these revenues increased by $751,917,000 this year. But also, as Mr. Mesa shared, and there was a long discussion regarding special ed costs, special ed expenditures are a significant share of the overall district budget. However, I do want to point out that some of these increases of cost of special education I do not have control over. For example, as Mr. Mesa shared, there's the increase to STRS and PERS, which affects all. And just for SPED staffing, it's over $200,000 to the special ed budget. And the district also doesn't have single control over the cost of county programs. That's determined by the SELPA districts and the county. And those costs have increased significantly as well due to their increases in their staffing needs. And in addition, any increase to salary and benefits also affects that. And overall, the expenditures, increased expenditures are $808,980. Okay, so now I just want to get into the recommendations I'm providing to help guide the department and the district for the upcoming years. And as I go through, I'll be referencing some pages in your binder. So you can refer to it later, or you can, read it later. If you have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So under tab 2, pages 1 to 5, is the data and information that supports the following recommendation: to reduce the number of students in special ed and to keep the district compliant under the 10% threshold. All school site principals were interviewed regarding school site academic and behavioral interventions, and copies of the notes from these interviews are in Appendix A. But in summary, school sites do not have evidence-based academic and behavioral interventions in place. Federal law states that prior to referral to special education, school districts must document general education interventions, and GUSD does not have the academic or behavioral interventions available to school sites. A student success team manual and forms were developed, and site administrators were trained on this process in December of 2016. I recommend continued support to the sites for consistency and fidelity of implementation. And Appendix B contains the some selected recommendations for intervention from the Department of Education's response to intervention. And the recommendation is that Ed Services and Student Services work together to help provide the needed interventions prior to special ed. Other means of addressing the percentage of students in special ed are to provide oversight and training to ensure that initial assessments, IEP goals, progress and goals is documented, and staff is trained to determine if a student continues to be eligible for special education. We continue to have a need to work with the staff to, the staff is very kind and want to continue to help students even if they may not need the intensive support from special ed. So we need to continue to work with the staff to have those conversations and to have the data to support exiting a student. This school year, 138 initial special education assessments were completed, and an additional 588 triennial or 3-year assessments were completed by school psychologists. Each assessment is comprehensive and ranges from 8 to 15 hours per student, depending on the student. The use of the SST process and having research-based academic and behavioral interventions are crucial to providing support prior to a referral to special education. After a review, mid-year review of our triennial reevaluation process, we developed a new procedure and trained our school psychologist and special ed resource and special day teachers on the process of how to conduct a file review instead of doing a full assessment for those students, which it's not necessary for, in order to cut down on the number of assessments that our psychs are doing. They are doing so many assessments, they don't have time to support the school in other ways. Careful weekly and monthly review of caseloads for special education staff is recommended to reduce the need for the hiring of additional staff. So taking a look at collapsing some caseloads, which would mean some specialists having to travel to sites throughout the year as their caseloads fluctuate. Pages 9 to 13 in the recommendations addresses issues with assuring that the district is compliant with the California Special Education Management Information System, otherwise affectionately known as CASEMIS, requirements. These include writing compliant IEPs and meeting assessment and IEP timelines. The district needs to be diligent and assign staff to monitor the data and make the necessary corrections to IEPs. Some of my staff is here. I think there was many hundreds of errors that we're working on correcting so we can submit our data to the state. And again, this data is looked at and monitored And if you continue not to be compliant in certain areas, then the state will come audit you, okay? Which isn't a good thing. Accountability structures at the site level are also essential to ensure compliance. So continued training of our administrators on how to look at an IEP and ensure that the IEP is compliant. District staff must be held accountable for following the process to ensure that SKIAs and BSAs are not assigned to students arbitrarily, which becomes a liability both legally and fiscally. We tend to get a lot of emergency calls with the first reaction being this student needs to have a one-to-one. And the student may not even be in special ed. And due to many factors, one being that there's not a lot of intervention for behaviors available to teachers in the general education realm, sometimes it's difficult not to put a para with that student in order to mitigate some emergency situations. So at the same time, creating defensible staffing parameters for the more intense special education programs would provide, such as our autism and ED programs. If they are in a special day class for autism or ED, if we staff that classroom appropriately, then students in those programs would not be as likely to need one-to-ones. And so what we're finding is a lot of students in those programs have their own designated paraeducator when a program design could serve that student just as well. Sorry, I lost my place. So along with that, the current practice of student services, I think I lost a slide in there somewhere. Okay, well, I'm just going to talk and it'll show up. The current practice of student services ensuring staff is deployed in the absence of an assigned SKIA or BSA has become burdensome, sometimes requiring 2 to 3 hours each morning for the coordinator and program specialist to move paras around from programs in order to cover these needs. And when paraeducators are pulled from other assignments to help cover absent staff, both those programs and the students suffer. Developing a pool of 3 to 4 SKIAs and BSAs to be deployed as substitutes on a daily basis is recommended. So now I need to be on the previous one. As the need to employ more contracted staff for teaching, speech, OT, and psychologist position, a plan should be developed so that not one particular school is impacted with a high number of contracted employees at the school site. There needs to be district staff at that site because if you have a high number of contracted providers, they do not know the culture of the district and will tend to make decisions that may not be what we have to develop procedures for. So just recommending that that's looked at in terms of where those contractors are placed so that they're spread evenly out and not at just particular school sites. Program descriptions need to be written and developed for our more intensive programs, including alignment with the secondary pathways presented earlier this spring. And I included those handouts in Appendix C. You got them prior, but I put them in as Appendix C for you. And those are the 3 intensive programs that if we had written defensible components that we can share with parents, they might be more likely to stay in district versus asking for an out-of-district placement. In order to facilitate successful transitions for students with severe disabilities from school to adult life, adoption of a community-based instruction program, which is currently under development, is important and will be brought to you in the fall. CBI is an essential program for special education, and failure to provide a defensible program will result in compliance and legal issues. And page 20 has other recommendations for that. Along with community-based instruction, the Adult Transition Services, which we call ATP, is required for moderate to severe special education students between the ages of 18 to 22. The district needs to develop a program description for the ATP program, including staffing, curriculum, procedures, and staff training. Current ATP students are not being provided a defensible instructional program in an appropriate setting. And there's backup information and data on page 21. It's necessary for all programs to continue to explore and collaborate, all district programs to continue and explore and collaborate with special education staff to identify research-based curriculum and strategies that will ensure that GUSD provides quality, defensible instructional programs. This was done this year, and new materials are on order for next year, but I know that more needs to be done. I really appreciated the teachers that helped me with this process and hope that in the future this can continue. I know how much our staff appreciates this support from the district. Pages 22 to 24 includes additional recommendations, and I'm going to move through those a little quickly. Professional development and Appendix D and E have more information. They include the surveys and feedback we received from our employee groups that we provided staff development for, and also includes a plan for next year. One main area is to ensure that all staff are trained and implement the district student success team process, and I've talked about that already. To continually update and revise the special education procedural handbook and continue to develop and implement procedures for identified areas of need, and some of those are outlined in pages 25 to 27. So I'll take any questions or feedback. I know there's a lot of information, but hopefully it's a good reference tool for you to use, and I'll also be leaving that for the new leadership. This was also shared with Dr. Flores as well.
Questions, comments, board members? Trustee Russell.
It's very extensive and follow-up and kind of a summary of update of what's, the issues that we need to address in this district, and I appreciate your candor and information. I think it's, this has been a challenge for our district. We've been trying to address for some time, obviously, and I recognize there's room for lots of improvement here, and probably one of the things highest on our agenda, what needs to be dealt with in our district. So I appreciate the recommendations. I think they may, I'm no expert by any means, but I certainly recognize the value of the recommendations that you bring forward. I realize that we're in transition right now, but it's great to have these, these things before us, because it really gives us a roadmap. And it kind of follows in that study that before you came on board that was presented to us. And so I, for one, appreciate the work you've done here, and would like to thank you for this report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosso. Other comments, questions?
A lot of needs.
No kidding.
It's overwhelming.
But it does give us a roadmap, and we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work on this.
So in closing, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to lead the Student Services Department for the past 4 years. I've grown a lot, and with the increase and support of the board to increase the leadership staffing of student services and with the coaching support, I think the department has taken a giant step forward this year in ensuring the students of GUSD are provided a quality program. And so I thank you.
Thank you.
And Barbara, on behalf of Dr. Flores, who couldn't be here, thank you so much for working with us as a team in Cabinet and for your service to GUSD. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
The next item on our agenda. Oh,
Oh, no.
Sorry.
No, let's keep going. I'll talk after the meeting.
oh, okay. So, the next item on our agenda, professional services agreement between Gilroy Unified School District and Fluency Matters to provide professional development in the 2017-18 school year. This is item F.
Yes.
And we have Director of Secondary Education, Deb Padilla.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Mesa, President Midgard, and trustees for allowing me to present this to you. What this agreement is to allow us to provide, over the course of the year, staff development for our world language teachers. We have gone to all of our departments in secondary and asked them to help us create their individualized professional development plans that will best support their areas. And with world language, what they're finding now that world language is one of our graduation requirements for next year's class is that their teachers are struggling in the area of teaching literacy. They are trained in language, but they are not necessarily trained in teaching some of the basic literacy skills for our students. And what Fluency Matters is known for is how to teach literacy through a world language curriculum. So we have had 2 teachers trained through Fluency Matters. They're actually the ones who have come back, done some of the professional development for our teachers over this past year, but they believe strongly that we need to bring in a trainer from Fluency Matters to give all of our department members that background. And as you'll see in the contract, they provide us with a full day of on-site service, and then the others are through webinars. And what's nice about the webinars is that the webinars will be tailored to the individual needs of the teachers and their experience level. So we actually have the opportunity to have multiple trainings within the same training day for our teachers, and we can tailor it more to their needs. So we are asking that you approve this contract of $3,700 to provide training for that staff.
Thank you. Questions from board members? This is an action item.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is item G, proposed budget for adoption, 2017-18.
Thank you, Madam President. So as you know, we had our public hearing on June 1st on the preliminary budget for adoption. The LCAP was approved tonight in the consent item on the agenda. And so the budget has not changed since June 1st. It mirrors the LCAP. What I would like to do, rather than take you through the same presentation, is to give you an update of what we currently know of the budget deal that the governor has reached with the legislature leadership. It's reported, and again, I have to stress reported because we don't still have an enacted budget as of yet. Perhaps there is a bill that's been signed in the last several hours, but I just don't know that. But reportedly, the key elements that have been agreed upon between the governor and the legislature that impact us is the allocation of the one-time funds that had been reported before. As you know, before he had reported a total of $1 billion plus to be allocated and counted against next year's budget, but really allocated until May of 2019, which is really the next fiscal year, 18-19. And that amounted to well over $2.4 million to us in one-time funds to be allocated in 18-19 fiscal year if and only if certain conditions apply, namely the state projected accurately their revenues, both on the capital gains tax along with the global budget. So because of those if and only if conditions, and because it wasn't really the next fiscal year, but the 18-19 fiscal year, we didn't include any of those $2.4 million in the budget. The legislature reportedly has agreed with the governor on a lower level of allocation of one-time funds. So rather than $1 billion plus, it's 800 million and change that he's allocated. So that 2.4 million now became 1.6 million. But more importantly, it's reported that the allocation will take place in 17-18 fiscal year. But I suspect that those if and only if conditions are still going to be there. So in a nutshell, I don't have enough information today to be able to say whether our revised budget will include that additional allocation. I think we'll have to wait to the trailer bills that are often signed a month after the main bill is enacted into law. That'll give us some parameters in terms of how confident we can be in terms of accounting for that and banking on that $1.6 million. So at this stage, the budget is holding steady in terms of our projections based on the May revision. The only variable that's significant is this one-time allocation, but we have to be careful. We don't know if it's just going to be a straight allocation as it has been in the past, or if those if and only if conditions will still be there. So for the time being, I do recommend that we take action on this budget. And then, of course, once we close the books, we'll know definitely by then whether or not that money's still there, and we'll come to you with a revised budget when we close our books in September, not only with obviously the true ending balance, which is of course an estimate always at this point in time, but also with that revised one-time allocation if we can bank on it or not.
Questions? So.
Trustee Russell has a question.
So effectively, what I'm hearing is, we weren't counting on the
2.4 million initially based on the May revision.
Initially till the next year before we would budget for it, essentially. But now we're saying, now it's 1.6, and they're saying that maybe it might come sooner, or in other words, that we can factor it in our current budget and not wait to factor it in the coming year.
Correct. So there's a higher probability that we'll actually see money in 17-18 on a one-time basis. I just have to know that the budget doesn't have that if and only if conditions, that it'll be a straight allocation as it has been in the past.
And we'll likely know about that by when?
Sometime in July, these trailer bills come out, so even though they'll technically meet their statutory deadline of today to sign a main budget bill, there's about 16 different budgetary bills that eventually come up to the legislature for a vote that simply require just a majority. It's those trailer bills that tell us exactly what we need to know and whether or not these allocations will take place automatically, or if it's going to hold until, say, April tax collections, which is, I suspect, what the Department of Finance was telling him, hold up until the April tax collections to make sure that your trend, because that's huge at the state level, and then release that in May, which is, I think, what initially he had in mind. I just don't know if that variable has changed, which obviously is significant to us. There's no rush for us to put in added revenue if we can be strategic about when we put it in. There's always budget updates that I bring to you during interim reports. There's nothing to prevent me from next month coming to you or whenever we have a board meeting to say this is definitely now, and we can add it into the budget. There's nothing to stop that, us from doing that. It is harder to take it away once you put it in if you don't have it.
Other questions, comments? I think we all appreciate your conservative approach to this, not building it in until we know what we're going to get. Okay, so this is an action item. I'll entertain a motion that we approve the 2017-18 budget.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kimberly Mason. She's our Director of Fiscal Services, and she's going to give us a monthly district cash flow update.
Did I miss something?
He thought he got, that we didn't have any charts and presentations, but here you are.
So good evening, board members. So I am here to update you on our current cash flow status. And this presentation is relating to the actuals as of July through the end of April. And you'll see here the beginning cash balance is a little over 16. Oh, it's not going forward. It's going forward here. There you go. So the beginning cash balance in April is a little over 16 million. And our revenue for that month that was brought in is a little over 15.7 million. Our expenditures for the month of April, a little over 9.8. And to let you know, the Tran has been fully paid back in the month of April. And so that brings us to an ending cash balance or cash flow balance of 21.5. And our payroll for that month is a little over 8.3 million, which is 85% of the total expenditures for April. And then, of course, you have your May and your June projections at this time. And the next chart here is, again, another way of looking at those balances after payroll has closed, the end-of-month payroll. Okay, any questions?
Questions? Thank you very much, Kimberly.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay, item I, Resolution 1617-58, to adopt Education Protection Account, the EPA Prop 30 spending plan for 2017-2018. Again, Kimberly Mason will present this for us.
Thank you. So this is regarding our education protection account, and every year we have to bring it to you, and we have to let you know of our spending plan and how these dollars are used. This is Prop 30 funding, and as you know, it's phasing out. It'll totally expire by the end of 18-19, and Prop 55 was passed in November of 2016, and at this point in time, it's estimated to take us through the year 2030. Whether or not that actually happens, that'll be dependent on the state and our economy and how things run from here on out. I just wanted to point out that we always have spent in the past this money. We go ahead and we move over some of the teachers' full compensation, salary, and benefits. And so that's done at the end of the year. And this money is also part of our LCFF total funding. So again, like in this current year in 16-17, we started out around 14 million estimated. We're now down to 2.2 million for 17-18. However, that means that the other two parts of LCFF are going to have to hopefully make up that difference in our taxes and the actual state aid revenue. And then also, too, there aren't any changes, even though it's now Prop 55, there aren't any changes in the calculation or how this is distributed. They have 89% that is provided for K through 12 schools, and then 11% to community colleges. They are also looking at a portion of this money possibly being used for some healthcare reasons, but they're not sure what that looks like at this point in time. It's just been talked about at this point in time. So there really isn't a change in how the money is allocated or calculated. It is a lower amount, but it's for the same purposes. And we still have, the guidelines are that we still have to bring it to you, and that plan has to be approved.
Okay. This says information, but it is an action item?
Yes.
Is an action item.
It's a resolution. I'll entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a question.
I have
Mr. Rosso.
Let's see, here it is. I'm sorry. On the certification page, I have a question on where, on number 4, on criteria and standards, that we show on the local control funding formula of revenue, projected change in LCC revenue is within the standard for budget 2 subsequent fiscal years and it says not met. Why does that reflect that?
So it's probably the variance between 14 million and 2.2 million. Anytime you have a huge variance like that, it'll flag it out because it's supposed to deviate within 1 or 2 percentage points. So what happens here is as Prop 30 is phasing out with a sales tax component and only a little bit of a layer of income is in there, anytime where you have 14 million, in excess of 14 million really, during the 16-17 fiscal year, and then you take that same line item and you then say it's 2.2 million now, it's gonna flag it out automatically. And then we have to explain it. And these are the estimates that we received, and there are about 2.2, 2.4 million out in the subsequent years. Basically, the sales income tax component of this is not there anymore. It's a reflection of the income tax component that's still there. And it doesn't pick up until January 1 of 2018 with Prop 55, and that'll slowly start to tick up because January is half the fiscal year. It's the full tax year, but we're not gonna get that full benefit in that fiscal year until 6 months after. So it's a reflection of just the pure deviation from 14 to 2.2.
So is that considered a negative
No.
mark on us?
No, it just says, hey, explain this variance, fiscal, business office, county, look at this variance. And it's gonna be throughout the California. Every district that receives EPA funds will have that variance flagged.
Criterion Standards looks at everything very detailed and individually, but as a whole, we have no negative effect on that. We meet all standards.
Thank you.
Great question.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. This is a resolution to adopt the EPA Prop 30 spending plan for 2017-18.
Thank you.
Heather Bass,
Yes.
B.C. Doyle,
Yes.
Mark Hood,
Yes.
Pat Metcalf,
Yes.
Linda Pacino,
Yes.
Jaime Rosso.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Okay, moving on to J, Resolution 161757, Amendment to Employment Agreement between Gilroy Unified School District and Alvaro Mesa, Assistant Superintendent, CBO Business Services. And Kim Felice, Director of Human Resources, will present this for us.
Good evening, President Midgard, board members, and Mr. Mesa. Tonight, I am presenting Resolution 1617-57, an amendment to the employment agreement between Gilroy Unified School District and Alvaro Mesa, our Assistant Superintendent and CBO of Gilroy Unified School District. This amendment reflects a change in the term of contract, extending his employment agreement by 1 year through June 30th, 2020. The extension of Mr. Mesa's contract acknowledges his hard work and commitment to Gilroy Unified School District. I'm asking that the board approve this amended agreement. Are there any questions?
Trustee
Yeah.
Doyle?
Yes.
It says that the agreement would be for 3 years and.
Yes, I'm extending it 1 year. It's extending one year out. So yes, it is a 3-year agreement with an extension of 1 year.
Trustee Rosso, did you have a question?
I'd like to move approval.
Second?
Been moved and seconded that we approve this resolution, 161757, the amendment to employment agreement between Gilroy Unified School District and Alvaro Mesa. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, resolution, sorry.
Heather Bass,
Yes.
B.C. Doyle,
Yes.
Mark Hood,
Yes.
Pat Metcalf,
Yes.
Linda Pacino,
Yes.
Jaime Rosso.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next resolution, 161756, amendment to amended and restated employment agreement between Gilroy Unified School District and Dr. Deborah A. Flores, Superintendent, and Kim Felice will present this again.
I'm presenting an amendment to the superintendent contract. The changes to her employment contract is term of agreement, extending her contract with Gilroy Unified School District 1 year, so this would be a 4-year agreement. The additional change to her employment agreement would be in the health and other fringe benefits. So I would like to read that change into the record. Beginning July 1, 2017, the superintendent is entitled to participate in health and welfare benefits to the same extent and with the same district contribution rates as provided for all other management employees. These benefits are subject to change at the discretion of the board. The district shall continue to pay the superintendent an additional $1,000 per month for other health-related expenses. That is no change to her current contract. The changes are the additional year to a 4-year term and allowing Dr. Flores to participate in health and welfare benefits if she chooses at the same level as other management employees. By the board approving this amendment to agreement shows the appreciation and the value of her contributions as superintendent of Gilroy Unified School District. Are there any questions?
Move approval.
Second?
I have a motion to approve and a second. Resolution, please.
Heather Bass.
Yes.
B.C. Doyle.
Yes.
Mark Hood.
Yes.
Alex Wood.
Yes.
Linda Pacino.
Absolutely, yes.
Jaime Rosso.
Yes.
On behalf of Superintendent Flores, thank you very much for approving this amendment to her employment agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the superintendent evaluation process. As you know, one of the most important roles of a school board is to hire and evaluate the superintendent. And as a board, we have used one process for evaluating her for several years now. It's rather lengthy, rather cumbersome in some ways, and so this part of her evaluation we do discuss in public. There is a concern, a suggestion that perhaps we take another look at how we evaluate our superintendent, perhaps revise our current method. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, but I will. I absolutely think that the process we use for the evaluation of the superintendent is far lengthier than it needs to be and far more detailed than it needs to be. We have a 55 questionnaire evaluation tool. It used to be 64 questions on it, one of them including sense of humor, which we managed to take off.
That's because some of us have no sense of humor.
And I think we need to take a look at it. What I would propose is that we have a committee of 3 of us who looks at other tools and see if we can, as a group, come up with something that we would present to the board.
I would agree.
And I would, obviously, we should look at it. We should always be looking at an evaluation process.
Right.
But I disagree with the reason we should look at it is because it's detailed and because it's lengthy. Well, the fact is, we've been blessed with an outstanding superintendent. And it may seem redundant at sometimes to have such a comprehensive evaluation process, but I've been on boards where we did not have an outstanding, fantastic superintendent, and that would, the tool we have would have been very valuable in the circumstances. So I support looking at it. I support revising it if we come up with some necessary things, but I disagree that the reason to do it is because it's detailed and it's lengthy. I mean, again, you started this off, Pat, by saying the most important job we have. And it is the most important job we have. So if it takes a little bit of time and it takes a little bit of effort and it's a pain sometimes, well, I think it's well worth it for the results that we're likely to achieve with it.
Well said. I think the intent of this is let's look at what we're using and what else is out there.
Yeah, we should always do that. Yeah.
So,
And be effective. That's as efficient and as effective as we can.
Yeah.
right. And Mr. Rosso?
And, I share the comments of Mark, and but I'm always for improvement. I have no issue, I don't have any issue with suggestions for improvement. And I agree with Mark that, what we've done has worked very well for us. We've been very fortunate to have an outstanding superintendent during the years that we have served. And we don't know what the future will bring, but it's always good to kind of continue the process of trying to make our evaluation process even better. And more, how would you call it, make sure that it is being as effective as we want it to be. Thank you.
And one example of that is what James Pace has done for us recently, that he's our resident techie, and so he's revised the format. It's the same questions, but it's how they are portrayed. And of course, we do it all online, and he's been very helpful in this regard.
It's made it a
So,
lot easier.
Yeah.
I'm curious, we haven't shared the evaluation tool. Is there any rationale for not sharing it, what we use?
Tom Bundros, who's the one who created it,
Yeah.
actually applied to be a presenter, we're so proud of it, to CSBA.
Uh-huh.
And CSBA, they couldn't be bothered with it, but, so we have tried to share it in the past.
Right.
And there's no reason not to share it.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that, it's kind of interesting we talk about it, but, people understand this is the tool we use. I mean, we're saying this is what we've been using, and we're looking to improve it.
And along those lines, maybe the committee could look at a way of institutionalizing the process, specifically now that we have this electronic version that we're able to fill it out. Well, if James Pace got hit by a truck tomorrow, we wouldn't have that anymore.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that repository of knowledge is somewhere in the district so it doesn't get lost.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point.
It's on our desktop.
Okay, so here's the question. Who would like to serve on this subcommittee? Linda, Mark?
I'm available to serve if there are evenings, not during the day.
Don't knock it out.
So that's up to the
I'm
rest
sure
of
the subcommittee could come to an agreement on when they would like to meet.
9 PM at the man cave.
Okay, so we have Linda, Mark, and Heather. I don't know if James would like to be on this subcommittee.
I would assume that he
That-
does.
that he'd be a
You
good,
can't have four.
No, we can't
you only
have
have
four.
3.
Yeah, we can only have 3, but
He
just
would be a good one.
commenting,
Yeah, yeah.
it would be.
And I wouldn't, I'd be okay with giving up my position to James if it's gonna make a difference whether or not he can participate.
Or I would give up mine.
Okay.
We can just have James do it.
You can just have James do the whole thing. There you go.
Well,
We'll figure it out between.
you're the one that's making the recommendation. I think you should definitely be on the committee. And, you're next in line to be our president, so,
Yep, also true.
Okay, that's also true.
And it's important to have people on the subcommittee who are actually going to have to work with this tool, with the next superintendent, whenever that is.
That's right.
And so, but to get back to Jaime's point, there's no problem in sharing the tools we use. That's fine. The evaluation is, that part is done in closed session.
Right.
And then it's up to the superintendent how much she wants to share, if she does.
In fact, we've recently shared it with another school board for use in their district in Santa Clara County, or for consideration for use in their district. They had a very poor tool.
Which district is
It's a small one, I don't recall the name.
Okay, so we have 4 people who've said, yeah, they'd help on it, so then we'll have to get that down to 3 and see where we go from there. Okay? Great, thank you. Okay, we're moving along. Last but not least, we'll move into facilities and maintenance operations. We have a very long list of projects from facilities and maintenance.
You want to give us a 3-minute break?
Sure, let's take a break. That's great. Let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Good evening, everyone. Mine's going to be really short.
We're going to take just a brief break.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
And yeah, everybody else back there can leave if they don't want to stay.
Julie Avnet, we always look forward to this.
Deja vu from 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Mine's going to be really quick because since last month, nothing has changed really in our cash flows. So I'm just going to kind of zip through those and then start talking a little bit about the current, what we know so far about the governor and the state funding. More and more noise and louder noise, so we're all feeling pretty confident that he is going to allow bonds to be sold. He's saying again, summer/fall. I kind of like to push it out to the end of the calendar year, but it's looking much more likely that that will occur. In the meantime, on our cash flows, which I'd pointed out before, the Rucker modernization money, that's the only one that's been up there and been sitting there for 3-4 years now, unfunded approval. The last SAB meeting, State Allocation Board, they shifted, basically Rucker and a whole bunch of other applications that have been sitting there got shifted from the B unfunded list, we'll call it, to the A unfunded list. So when they sell bonds, we should get funded for that amount, which I think was about $770,000. It's on our cash flows there. So we should get that. We shouldn't have to do anything other than sign a form that says, yes, please give us the cash, finally. In addition to that, we are looking at Gilroy High School's modernization eligibility. Go back to this, which is about $773,000. The way the modernization program works is if you are replacing old portables like for like, meaning classroom for classroom, with permanent construction, which can be the modular type, but they consider it permanent, you can apply for this modernization money. And so we're starting that process now. We hadn't counted that in to this point in terms of the Measure E and the Measure P and everything else, because up to this point, we didn't know when it was going to happen. We've had it in here, but we've had it pushed way out. In terms of that individual project, we hadn't worked that into what available funds we had up to this point. And now with school facilities consultants, who Mariana and Alvaro and I worked together with them to get them the certain information, they're going to start putting that pieces together, and we're going to apply for that modernization and see if we can't get that. Now, that has not gone in at all yet, and there's a lot of other projects that have gone in before us that already have date stamps over the last 3 years. But the published numbers of applications that they know are in waiting to be looked at doesn't reach the $3 billion in modernization that is ultimately going to be available. So it might be a couple of years down the road, but we should be able to get that as long as everything pencils out and we can send that application in. We should be able to get those funds. The only thing we have to do is be sure that the application gets in with a date stamp, not an approval, but just a date stamp, before we take occupancy of this new classroom building. And that shouldn't be a problem. It's just a matter of then the state processing it and approving it after that. So we're pursuing some things in that regard too. So I thought I would just update you on those this evening.
Thank you, Julie. Sure. Always good to get good news.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Russell.
Okay, on the modernization funds for the schools, I find it rather curious that Elliott apparently is potentially has modernization funds available to it for $202,000, whereas an older school like El Roble only has 112. Why would that be?
Without having the details in front of me, it could be that somewhere in the last several years, El Roble has already accessed some of its eligibility, and that's what's remaining. It could be something like that. It could be that perhaps Elliott maybe has some portables that have been sitting there long enough to generate a little bit of eligibility. I couldn't really say without looking at the details. But there's those kinds of things that can affect how the numbers pencil out.
That's fine. I mean, again, Elliott's a new school. And of course, El Roble's not. But at any rate, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'd have to see the details of how they figured that out to know what's in it.
They built a new multi-purpose room at El Roble. That could have sucked up some of the funds.
Yeah.
But we can look into that and follow up, Trustee
Sure,
Ross, so that's an
sure.
excellent question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie. We appreciate it. Okay, 10B is a resolution, notice of completion for the Brownell Lunch Shelter Project. Did you want to do that next? Or did you want to?
Oh, hang on, that one's there. I just wanted to point out, before we get started here, Alvaro and I thought this would be a good slide to include. The slide is the facilities priority slide that we presented last September that the board voted on for the future facilities. So it's a good slide to have so you can refer back to what values and budgets that you approved. So if you have a question of where the money came from, you have it right here, so thank you. So if we include that, oh, is it? Okay. So if we include that for the future on every one of our reports, you can look at that, and then if you have questions, you can refer back to that.
No, we really appreciate this, because this is the history of how did we pay for that, how do we pay for that, how do we pay for that? So I guess it was quite a challenge to put all this together, huh, Julie? To dig it out and figure out.
Alvaro did a lot of the work as well. But
Yes, and so I want to highlight, and thank you, Jim and Julie. I want to highlight one of the key projects that the proceeds from Wren Avenue is listed on there, the district office parking lot. We all stated back in the study session that we would put that district office parking lot project on hold until the main element of the Gilroy High School 20 classroom 2-story permanent building was built. Because at that point in time, we weren't sure if 13 million was enough to build that to our standard. So that will be the case. The parking lot will take a backseat to all these other projects because we don't know the midway through a construction project what we're going to uncover, what the bid environment will be. So that'll be the very last possible project that we take on in terms of priority. That'll be the last project that we can take. Because we don't know what the bid environment will be. We might be higher, might be lower. Maybe that number and other projects come up for discussion at a board level. But just to remind the board that even though that $2.5 million is there, we're not actively pursuing that because we know the priorities are the 20-story classroom for growth, and we want to make sure we get these projects built.
And then just one last to my point earlier about the Gilroy High School modernization eligibility. You won't see that as one of these funding sources up there, and that was my point earlier, is that we may be able to access it, might come in a couple of years. Some of these others, if we can go for them and access those. But we didn't count them in because at that point we just didn't know when or how much or if it was going to happen at all, so.
Okay, so yes, so we can go ahead and move on at your pleasure. You've brought up the resolution for the Brownell Lunch Social Projects. A very standard notice of completion, end of the project, so we can get the 35
Next slide, please, Jim.
Pardon me?
Next slide.
Thank you. There we go. So this is for the notice of completion for Brownell.
I think we'll go ahead and go through these, and then we can go
We'll
back. and
buzz
go-
through them?
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be brief. Christopher High School Science Lab and Art, Science and Art Labs. We have a contract with Office Depot for furniture for $64,351 and some change. We also have a contract with Laboratory by Design for the cabinets for those classrooms for $50,542. Both of those are necessary to get on, in the books now and to get on the, to get in the queue so that the cabinets are about a 10-week lead time, furniture's a little bit less. So we need to purchase those now in order for us to get done with those classrooms on time this fall when they need them. And then we have also Resolution 161760, authorization to solicit bids for the Christopher High School lab projects. It's the two labs and two physics labs and the art lab. Gilroy High School Science Labs, we also have Resolution 161759, authorization to solicit bids for that project. Gilroy High School Building G-Acoustic Project, of course, as you know, each project has a testing and lab services portion. So for Gilroy High School Building G, contract with the Earth Systems Pacific for testing and lab services for 1615. Gilroy High School parking lot, once again, we have a testing lab, so contract with RMA Group for testing and lab services, $9,043. One thing you need to understand is that when we let these for lab services and testing, we solicit to 11 different companies, and we select the one that best fits the project for the best price. So this is not, we're not bringing these to you as a sole proprietor. These have been vetted out from 11 different companies, so.
I'm sorry, what is a lab service required for the parking lot?
Anytime you have a Division of the State Architect approved project, there is a, what they call a T&I sheet, which is a testing and inspection sheet that's attached, a DSA 103. That means that you have to have a testing and lab certified by DSA perform the testing according to that sheet. So almost every single DSA project, Division of the State Architect project, has a testing and lab element to it. Yes, and the other part is, of course, the inspector of record, you know that as well. So those are the two things you'll always see on every DSA project. Now, there is one where they didn't have a testing and inspection sheet, so we don't have to do it, but unfortunately, most of them are. This one is, so.
And Trustee Pacetto has a question, please.
So thank you, Heather, for asking that, because I was wondering about, for the acoustic project, what is the testing and lab?
It varies. You know, it's, the testing can be anything from anchor pulls, which is mostly what it's gonna be. There's a lot of different tests that occur in a construction project. If we're pouring concrete, they take cylinders and they have break tests. The break tests mean that we say that we're gonna be at 4,500 PSI on the break for the concrete, has to break at 4,500. We break that at certain intervals, and if it doesn't break at those intervals, then all that concrete comes back out and gets redone, so.
I just couldn't picture what we
Oh,
were
yeah.
testing for the acoustic.
So they got anchor bolts, and they actually go in, a lot of times they'll take a torque wrench and torque those. A lot of times they'll actually put a pull test on it, where they'll take a machine and put pull on it, and it can't pull out of the ground up to a certain way, amount of pounds. There's a lot of different ones, you know. And that's why you see some of these are really small and some of them are really big. In the Gilroy High School parking lot project, we've got a lot of concrete to break. We've got a lot of compaction to do, so.
Yep.
So that's why some of them are really high and some of them are really low. When you see the ones that come in for solar, those are gonna be quite high. They're gonna be in the $20,000 range. A lot of concrete, a lot of testing and the compaction for the holes, et cetera. When you see the one for the new school, it will be extremely high. And if you've ever saw the one for Gilroy, Christopher High School, you would know that there's so many testing components in there that you're probably near $1 million or so. So that's the variations, all the way from about 2,000 up to about 1 million, so.
Thanks.
Sure. Another one? Okay.
Okay.
Contract with Hollister Moving and Storage for moving services. This is for moving the contents of the portable building, storing it. After the portable buildings get moved, the contents go back in the storage containers, leave. This is the Glenview Elementary School Foothill Community Health Center. I think that a lot of you are aware of this, a lot of you may or may not be. We've offered a building for them to do dental and medical services in. They're in the process of building that out so that they can do those services. And of course, once again, it's a DSA building and requires an inspector of record. We have to hire the inspector of record, they will pay us back. That is the rule for DSA. Anytime there's a inspector of record or a testing lab, we have to hire it if they're doing work on any of our property, even if somebody else is doing for the work and paying for it. City pools the same way, et cetera.
Ms. Pacino has a question?
Yes, certainly.
So for the Foothill Community Health Center,
Uh-huh.
is this the same building that they're using now?
Yes. They're going in over the summer and they're putting in a lot of stations for the dental, and they actually got approval from Division of the State Architect to move forward with their construction.
So it's not an additional building, it's the same building?
Same building.
Yeah, they're finally to the point that they can make the modifications that they've wanted to make for months.
Yeah, they have their architect, Ken Construction is their contractor, and Bruce Flynn is their inspector of record. Rod Kelly, Elementary School, our continuing closeout of Division of the State Architect projects. Once again, we started with 72. We're narrowing it down. We're down to around 25, 30. Some of these are expensive, some of them aren't. This one happens to be a closeout where we have to do a lot of work in the parking lot to the DSA specifications for ADA compliance. $8,000 with EF&S concrete. It gets another closeout with DSA, which we're going to need to do on all these projects at some point. What happened here? Oh, here we go. So this is where we went right from EF&S concrete for Rod Kelly to contracts with EF&S concrete for El Roble repairs for $70,490. This is maintenance. We've switched from facilities to maintenance. Dan isn't here. Dan had his knee operated on. Dan's doing wonderful. He's actually exercising. He wishes he could be here, and he said he could, but his doctor said no. So he was so kind to allow me to do his items for him. He's done mine. I'm being facetious. So let's see. This is for tree planter replacement and trip hazards at El Roble School, of which there are many.
And Dan did include some pictures, I think, that are helpful.
You have
for
pictures? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, then maintenance, another maintenance update is we have several contracts with TSC for the transport. TSC is the company they use for the cameras. TSC for the transportation yard, they're upgrading the cameras at the transportation yard because they can't quite get enough view of the people that are over there doing bad things. And once they get them, the police usually know who they are, so they need to get a little better definition. Contract with TSC for the preschool and maintenance operations. We have a couple of bad areas. We've been broken into a lot, and we really need those cameras to be able to focus on the areas so we can catch them as well.
Okay, quick question, Jim.
Uh-huh.
So in the event that high-speed rail comes through
Uh-huh.
and goes down that path and
Yes.
takes out our transportation department,
Yes.
maintenance, blah, 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 can that equipment be moved?
My understanding, and I have been informed, that yes, that equipment can be moved and reused.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would not be fiscally responsible to do this.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, and then the last one, of course, is the contract with TSC. They want to get the Gilroy High School greenhouse in that because of there's so
Please.
much that happens back there. Really good idea on their part, really good. Contract with Miracle Play Systems. This is a safety issue. This is for upgrading and repairing the all the different play areas in the district. The ratification of contract with ADM for the Gilroy High School, this is a ratification, they already did it. There was a timing issue, you had to do this at a certain time, otherwise your window of opportunity left because they were breeding. So this has to do with bats that were over by the pool, literal flying bats, not swinging bats, for $6,980. From what I understand, Dan says that project was very successful. So I think that's really cheap to go and play with bats because personally I can't stand the vermin. You probably love them.
I think they're cool.
Yep, see? Maintenance, okay, yeah. Contract with Johnson Electronic. So this is one of the ones that I helped to work on. Johnson Electronic has given us a price, and this is one of three or four prices that came in. You probably have those on there. To do the annual service on all of our sites. They have to be tested, and they have to pass test annually in perpetuity. The other one is a contract with Phoenix Fire Prevention, which is for the Johnson Electronics does the dry part, which is the smoke detectors, horns, strobes, et cetera. And then Phoenix does the sprinklers. So they'll be going through and doing all the sprinklers and the risers and all those parts. So he just wanted to give an update on some of the things that he had been doing. Water testing with the city water district at all school sites. So that's because of that lead contamination issue in Flint, Michigan. There was a requirement to test all the sites, and he's in the process or has completed that process. Summer team cleaning at all sites. The guys are ganging up and going to the sites that are available, and then, of course, they'll be moving into the sites that are not, which are the sites that are being used for summer school. And then summer M&O projects, which there was a handout, and then there's some little information here. You can see why he needs cameras back by the greenhouse. It's a really highly destructive area. I mean, that's the least of the things is the graffiti. A lot of bad things happen back there. So here's our greenhouse. He's got mulch, and more mulch. Apparently he gets large piles of mulch. As a matter of fact, as part of the solar project, which started on Monday, we had to cut down about 8 trees, and we mulched those, and we're using that mulch, leaving that on site for him to use in the landscaped areas to keep the weed control down. So, and then he buys the colorful mulch for the frontage areas. And now we're down to questions. And I think we've already been through quite a few questions, but that was the speed dating version of the.
You know, I would just like to
Ding, ding.
comment and compliment Dan on 3 items actually, 10P and 10R and 10S, because the fact that all of our playground equipment is being checked now on a regular basis, repaired, replaced. I mean, you know, it takes a lot of wear and tear. And I'm just so glad that he is here in the district, because for a long time, none of that was ever done, not on a regular basis. And he said same with the fire protection systems, that should be done
Yes,
annually.
annually.
But it hasn't been.
Has not.
So I just think that's all really good news for us, for our students. And our teachers, everybody who works there. Okay, so I can entertain a motion. We have A through S, and we have 3 resolutions in there, so I could have a motion and a second, then we'll just do a roll call vote.
I'd move approval for A through S.
A through S.
Second.
That's right, B through S.
B through S.
B.
sorry.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Heather Bass.
Yes.
B.C. Doyle.
Yes.
Mark Goode.
Yes.
Pat Midgard.
Yes.
Linda Pacino.
Yes.
Jaime Rosso.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, it was kind of a long
Thanks for your
time
patience.
to wait.
Oh.
Okay, okay, so let me ask if there are any board member reports. Okay,
We were very busy last week.
yes, we were, and the week before. Promotions, graduations,
Best time of year.
yeah.
I did want to just say a real brief. You know, I did go to as probably all of us did, to some of the elementary presentations, fifth grade promotion. And I just have to say how
Thank you, Julie.
amazing the presentations, student presentations were, how polished. You know, they were really exceptional, you know, the ones that I saw. And I don't know if that's happening at all the schools. I would, you know, my feedback is that that is what's happening in all the different elementaries. But I just really want to commend at the elementary in particular. I mean, yes, they did great at the middle schools and the, you know, the graduations and all that. They were great. But I was really impressed at the fifth grade promotions that I saw I saw it at El Roble and at Elliott, El Roble and, what was the, Rucker.
Oh, nice.
And I saw Elliot's, and I would agree. It was very nicely done.
Very polished.
They got all those kids promoted in an hour and 20 minutes.
Great.
Your mileage may vary depending on what elementary school
I
you're at.
understand. That's why I wanted to say that.
Okay, so, and a reminder that we will have a special board meeting on the morning of July 5th at 9 a.m. We have 2 items, so anybody, we need at least 4, but anybody who could come would be great. And so no other announcements, and that will be our next meeting, and that will be posted ahead of time. Anything for the board agenda calendar?
I would like to see us consider a study session going forward on the issues that were raised and recommendations on the special ed. And I know that we have yet to get our new,
Okay.
you know, administrators in place and staff.
Right.
But, you know, giving that consideration, like to have it calendared at some time, reasonable time going forward, yes.
Okay, I wrote that down. Any other recommendations for future agenda items that you would like the executive committee to consider? Okay, now the next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Thursday, August 3rd, 2017. Closed session will be held at 5:30, followed by the open session at 7, and the agenda will be available on the district website by 5 p.m. on Friday, July 28th, 2017. With that, this meeting is adjourned.